Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of what if Female Deku died while protecting someone precious to her? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. I've always loved the cold. The sensation of frost biting my naked skin, overwhelming my senses with numbness. It's for the same reason as my love for rain. They reminds me that I'm alive. The physical pain kickstarted my brain to the fact. Lying in the midst of thin snow, I didn't know whether to be grateful or morose for the irony. The cold that I so loved was biting ferociously into my skin, slowly tinting the pale white with sickly blue. The snow that digged into the wound on my stomach made my whole body painfully numb. Even without seeing it, I knew the snow was turning red. Someone was screaming my name. The panic sounded clearly in their voice. My blurry eyes managed to find the figure holding their winter coat to my wound, the tips of his blonde hair stained with my blood. It was useless though, and from the sobbing he knew that too. My breaths were starting to be really hard to take. Even with my whole energy, the oxygen just didn't want to get in. It was probably because of the long steel that had pierced my stomach. From what I vaguely recalled, it could pierce my lungs, which is one of the easiest ways to kill someone. The blonde is desperately cupping my face with a bloody hand, softly slapping it to keep me awake. He was sobbing harder now. The green eyes showed his raw fear of losing me. I smiled softly, trying to assure him like I'd always done. He's always been such a crybaby, that little brother of mine, that if even possible, he sobbed harder, his mouth frantically saying things I couldn't hear, but could see. My hands itched to ruffle his messy hair as was our routine, but it couldn't move besides trembling. So I resigned myself to say a few last things to him. I knew I was drowning in my own blood, my own lungs failing me as the snow around us stained red. It was the tragic way I would go, but I died with my beloved brother's face as the last thing I saw, so I left the world with a gentle happy smile in my face. Since I love snow, cold, and rain, it's only natural that I love water as well. Swimming wasn't something I indulged in daily, but those days that I did, I treasured. The most often times were twice a week, since there weren't any swimming pools near my house. I fiercely envied one of my friends who owned a private pool in their backyard. Water always calms me, and I could stay in there for hours and still not wanting to get out. It was like a small piece of heaven for me. Needless to say, I used to spend hours inside the bathroom and regularly exasperated my family. Some days they even thought I fell asleep inside. Never had water made me panic like now. From the darkness, water hit my immobilized body, the waves rough and threatening. The water was rushing to the small gap of blinding light, and I with it. My lungs were caving in, I couldn't breathe. And then I was forced to pass through the small hole headfirst, warm things pulling gently at my chest. Everything seemed awfully too bright. There were buzzing noises all around me, as if people were talking, and someone cleaned my body with warm wet towel from head to toe. The liquid I wasn't even aware of was wiped clear. But despite all those overwhelming things, the only thing I really noticed was that I could breathe again. And with no small amount of relief, I cried. I cried, and in the back of my brain, I knew I realized something important. But even as warm pair of hands took me and an even warmer body hugged me to their chest, I tried not to think of it. I'm alive, I'm alive. Why am I alive? God, I'm glad I'm alive. What? I'm alive. Incoherent thoughts formed, but all of those evaporated once I opened my eyes. The brightness wasn't as bright anymore, and my blurry eyes managed to catch some shaped blobs in front of me. And no matter how I tried to deny it, surrounding me were giant people. Or to be precise, adult-sized people. It wasn't them who were giant, it was me who shrinked. I'm a baby again. Have to admit it wasn't my brightest moment, but I fainted. Being a baby was a blessing in disguise. For the first few months, I did nothing but suckling milk and sleeping. My fragile body demanded sleep whenever my stomach wasn't rumbling. The lack of motor skill and my blurry eyesight wasn't helping either, so there'd been little to no else to do. Also, my name is apparently Shizu. Either that or sure. My new parents usually alternated between those two, even though sometimes they called me something else, something along the line of Shizua. It was so rare that I couldn't remember it well. Oftentimes, I could hear them talking softly to me while I sleep, something I'm not sure real or not. After the 4th month, everything got better. I was able to actually see. My eyesight was still improving, but I'm grateful for it anyway. I'd also start babbling and I could stay awake for more than an hour now. My new parents are A-okay. My new father is a down-to-earth kind of person and like to smile and carry me everywhere he can. His smile is very infectious. I always felt ridiculously happy whenever he's around. My new mother is a gentle, soft-spoken woman, and a bit of a worrywart too. She likes to fret over the smallest things, like when I'd sneezed once. They look quite young with my new mother. I have to start calling her mama in my head from now on, being the youngest. But what grabbed my attention the most was her hair color. It's dark green. Her eyebrows are the same amazing color, so it couldn't have been faked. So jealous. I hoped I get that color, even though my new father's brunette hair is okay too. Speaking of, how are those possible again? I was pretty sure they're Japanese, from the littlest bit of the language I recognized and from their faces. Had Japanese somehow mutated their genes and became like their anime counterpart? Because green eyes aren't common in any countries of Asia too. Had I somehow been reborn into an anime or a manga? Ah, no way. I totally am. Something nudged me gently on my cheek. I looked up to the amused face of my new father. I'd apparently abandoned him to daydream on the middle of their father-daughter bonding time, his words. Oops. I babbled a bit in a half-hearted attempt to apologize, which he took by chuckling. He said something, and stood to the other side of the room and came back with a paper and a marker in hands. Shizuka, he called me and then said something I didn't understand, but I understand enough from his gestures that he's going to show something to me. Shizuka, look, he raised his written paper close to me, and point at the 4 kanjis. This is your name, Midoriya Shizuka? Wait, what? These 2 here is spelled Midoriya, our surname. They translate as Green Valley. And your first name here, Shizuka, means calm and excellent. He explained. Just because I happen to have the same last name as a main protagonist of an anime doesn't mean I'm in said anime. Midoriya is a common name, isn't it? Your name is Midoriya Shizuka, and Shizu-chan is the daughter of Midoriya Hisashi and Inko, father continued, blissfully aware of the mental drop inside his child's head. Of fucking course. Yes, of course I am reborn in an anime. Boku no Hero Academia, even. Don't get me wrong, it was one of my favorite anime and all. Certainly there are many worse animes to be born into. But I'd been reborn in the main protagonist's family. What if I accidentally change something? What will happen to the future, then? No, wait, is Izuku even going to be born? The answer: he isn't. And a part of me is glad, is relieved. I never wanted to be an older sister again. Never wanted a sibling to witness my death again. Never wanted to leave them again. Because it hurts. It still hurt. Cassiopeia Avery was a beautiful teenager. She's named after the most beautiful princess of Greece, and grew up as one. She never knew her mother, nor does her or her brother knew his. Their father has always been a bit of a playboy like that. Honestly, she was surprised they didn't have more siblings, as far as they knew. But despite that, Anthony Avery is a wonderful father. He worked hard from his house every day, so he never had to leave his children alone unless necessary. He's the one that changed their diapers, wiped their tears, and taught them the lessons of life. To them, Anthony is the most amazing father one could ever ask for. Their tight-knitted family is like that because of Anthony's dedication. Cassie and her brother couldn't be more thankful. And of course, she'd always been a daddy's girl. Her father obviously cherished both of them so much, and they him. It was why I couldn't accept Midoriya Hisashi as my father. Even at 1 year old, I still wouldn't think of him as my father, whereas I already think of Midoriya Inko as her mother and even call her mama. It's easier, considering there's never been a mother figure in her previous life. However, to this day, the unrelenting effort of Hisashi to make me call him Papa is still unsuccessful. There's always going to be one father for me. All of her dad's hard work of raising me. The last thing I could do is honoring him like that. The next morning, I woke up to giant smiles on my new parents' faces. "Happy birthday, Shizuka," was what I think they said the second I opened my eyes. My language isn't that good yet. Clear orbs took several seconds to observe the extra cheery attitude, and beamed in return. I'd missed being special, even though I was practically coddled by my parents every day. But birthdays are special, a whole day just for you. That day, I was given a breakfast of low-sugar cake. They'd learnt not to give her too much sugar after the last sugar rush, along with my favorite modest meals, mini onigiri and rice balls. Then, for lunch there was miso ramen, and for dinner they gave me sushi. Yup, it was heaven. Usually, gifts are given when one wake up, bright in the morning. But in the Midoriya household, said tradition is done in the night, right before bedtime. So after dinner and bath, I sat on the sofa of my living room, clad in an adorable bunny onesie. My knees and fingers bounced impatiently while Mama and Hisashi approached with gifts hidden behind their bodies. "Mama, one," I demanded. The childish voice and annoying lisp perfected my cuteness. Even I could tell I'm a cute kid. Hisashi would have melted into a puddle right then if he could. Inko, used to us, just cooed at the adorable picture and took a seat in the floor in front of me. She gave me her gift, which are toys, including the puzzle one I'd wanted. I squealed in delight and hugged my mother for all my worth. "Heim, open papas." Enthusiasm rearing inside my blood, I took the big box from his hands. The pale green box were neatly wrapped by a silver ribbon. Its design is beautiful with white laces and pearls and little bears. I'm definitely keeping the box. Unexpectedly, the insides beat the box itself. They're many kind of things. A book and some writing utensils that Hisashi explained I'll need when I start learning to write. It's going to be hell for me. 2 or 3 teething toys, a few candies I'll definitely treasure, a pair of necklace and bracelet for a child, and lastly, is a book almost the same size as the box. It's a scrapbook that I made just for you, Heim. Hisashi beamed, the brown eyes shining with love and adoration that were directed to me. You can put photos as you grow up, and write down things and explanation and anything else you want inside. Really? Found Of course, only the best for my precious Heim. And turns out Hisashi's personality is infectious too, because right there and then I melted. The honest beam he gave me, and the conviction I could saw he feel from his words made the fragile walls around my heart crumbled. Papa. My little Heim. My little Heim calls me Papa. And as I gave him a flying hug with teary eyes and countless thank yous, I realized something. I might have a father she adored before, and that's okay. He'll always be me father, the only one she'll call dad with spoiled tone, the only one she'll help fix cars, the only one she'll play soccer and golf and the occasional swim with. Midoriya Hisashi is my second chance of having a father, my redemption after breaking dad's heart by dying. He's the only one I call Papa, not Dad. My #1 fan, the one I'll make cookies with, the one I'll sneakily eat said cookies every day with. I'm not replacing Dad, instead I'm getting a Papa. 2 people with synonymous titles, but both hold different precious places inside my heart. After hugging for a few minutes, I turned to the side only to saw Mama holding a camera in one hand, having just took their pictures that she promised look great. It made me pouted for a good while as my parents laughed at my adorableness. In the end, I couldn't help but grin. It was a memorable day. And one day I won't remember much from that day. Only a treasured box, a homemade scrapbook, a precious photo, and a warmth surrounding me. To everyone's surprise, I have gotten a whole lot more active since I could walk. I had been so relieved my legs could finally function again that I just couldn't stop walking by myself. Always toddling everywhere, running around in an imaginary situation. Hey, I was bored. And generally just causing shenanigans in the household of Midoriya. Not even scrapes could stop me. No one really minded this change though. As a baby, I knew I was unusually quiet and attentive. Babies love to cry and are curious about everything, but I wasn't. The way I behaved probably more resembled an adult. So the Midoriya couple didn't mind this, at all. Since I was a year old, I've been taken out of the house a lot more. Apparently, Mama sometimes took me out when I was a baby, but I somehow was always asleep. It embarrassed me how insensitive I was considering my reincarnation status. However, it just proves that my body affects my maturity as well. But since then, I always asked my parents to go outside more often. The first time had been breathtaking and a great fresh air and overwhelming as well. The scenes, the surroundings, even the way the simplest things work. I've never been to Japan in before, and this Japan must have been at least a bit different than it. I giggled at everything and there were so many things I saw and more things I didn't. The world. It really is different from before, but also very similar. Japan's main street is crowded with people, and rarely did I saw a private automobile. Mostly, people are walking or riding a bike. The technologies are a bit more advanced, from what I'd observed, to the point of the creation of many unique weapons, but I hadn't seen much of it so I couldn't really tell. What made it different are the people. Antennas, wings, weird skin colors, and rainbow hairs. It was all very normal in this world. It was an everyday thing that you couldn't get through a day without seeing one. I'd even seen a kid with the face of a lizard and a man with fingers he could elongate once. I shuddered. It was a rather scary experience. This world of quirks are naturally strange to me. In before, everyone was as plain Jane could be. It was that simple. I'm thankful for Mama and Papa for being plain. Brunette hair, cream skins, and normal eyes and body. The only thing that's not plain is Mama's black and green hair that I inherited. I'd asked Mama before about quirks. Why do we have quirks, Mama? How? And what are quirks? What's yours and Papa's? The little slur I made on quirks had Mama laughing and cooing. Apparently, it was so adorable of her little daughter. Already 3, and I still couldn't pronounce art properly. At first, there are no quirks in this world, Shizu-chan. But then, all of a sudden, a baby is born with a quirk. One that made him glow, I think. And then more and more people developed quirks. A few are born with it, others got it at 3 to 4 years old. Whoa. So we all have no quirks? We all didn't have quirks, Shizu-chan. But yes. Those times are called the Silver Age. But when quirks are only recently appearing, other people started to protest and riot against those with quirks. But quirks are amazing. That it is. But remember this, Shizu-chan. Humans are afraid of the unknown. They shunned things that are different. And the time when quirks aren't accepted, we call it the dark time. There are lots of difficult things, even some threats of war, but those with quirks manage to prove themselves. How, Mama? Why, Shizu-chan, it was actually because of the appearances of villains. The heroes save people? Yes. Those with quirks become heroes in order to save the quirkless. And then, with some progress and time, quirks become a part of human society, and heroes become a profession. Pipof-shaun? The job, honey. Anyway, quirks are these special powers you got when you enter kindergarten, and they're usually inherited from family, especially your parents. Mama can attract little metal things with a wave of my fingers, like this. Whoa. Sugoi. While Papa could breathe small fires. I wonder what your quirk will be, Shizu-chan. Mama, does everyone have quirks? No, actually. Only 80% have quirks. What about the rest? They don't have quirks at all, Shizu-chan. We call them quirkless. So, what if I don't have a quirk, Mama? It's okay, Shizu-chan. Even if you don't, Mama and Papa will still love you very much. And that was that. I'd gotten the closure I seek from Mama's honest words and gentle smile, and knew that she'll keep her promise. Even though I'm a Zuku, what with my gender, I still wasn't sure if I'm the replacement for him or not. He might be born later, but there were no ways to make sure. But it was not the time to be thinking such things. Papa was late to come home, and today wasn't the first time. Papa worked at a big company as an inventor. He usually create new things, though what kind, he wouldn't tell me. He always go out at the morning and come home right before dinner, but it was already past dinner time by an hour. The food is already prepared on the table, but Mama and I hadn't touched any. My stomach rumbled, but still I stubbornly wouldn't touch any of it. From Mama's amused look, she must have noticed. Suddenly, the door opened. It was Papa, walking in with his briefcase in one hand and a tired slump in his shoulders. He instantly looked up when I cheered and hugged him tightly. Shizuka? He slowly stroked my hair. The surprise was a clear indication that he hadn't expected us to wait for him. Okiri, Anada. Tadaima, Inko, Haim-chan. Then they shared a kiss, squishing me between their bodies. I grimaced. Ugh, this is so disgusting and embarrassing at once. However, I let out zero protests and resigned myself and tried my best not to block any evidence of their lewd activities. Ironic, since I wasn't really embarrassed of sex before. Guess having a complete set of parents did it for you. At least Papa is home, and he's happy. If only I knew. Third year brings a lot of happiness, but also a terrible sadness. My parents took great care of me, and I was happy being coddled by them. As Cassiopeia, I have an amazing family, but oftentimes I found myself being independent and a rock for my brother. I couldn't even remember my toddler years from before, so my new life is great. Amazing, actually. Until one source of my happiness went away. 5 months into my third year in this second life, a terrible news came in. A friend and coworker of Papa came into our house late at night, one leg bandaged heavily, and told us a grave news. I'm so sorry, Midoriya-sen, your husband, Hisashi-sen, he was gone. I'm so sorry. Sobbing, he told us that there was an accident at work. A huge project they were working on had been messed up by a single accidental spill of a dangerous chemistry. The project, a big machine, had instantly went off like a bomb and made their building catch on fire. Lots of people died, but others managed to get out. The friend, Harazuko, had one leg stuck in one of the big remnants of the machine, but Papa saved him. No, Mama denied to herself. She could see where this was going. No, Hisashi. She knew. But Harazuko kept going, because his guilt overwhelmed him and he couldn't stop, couldn't even calm himself down. Papa saved him at the cost of his own life. Mama let out a tear or two when Harazuko finished, her hand automatically catching the sobbing man into her embrace as he fell. But despite his loud sobs and hiccups, her eyes were blank. Her green eyes are staring off to the open door, as if waiting for Papa to appear suddenly and tell that it was all a big joke. When he didn't, Mama started to cry. It wasn't like Harazuko's loud cries. Instead, Mama's are silent and suppressed, and certainly as much as his, and much more sorrowful. She clearly didn't want me to see her looking like that. The only thing it did was made my heart ached even harder. That day, the memories of Papa kept playing inside my head. His smile, his laugh, his attempt to make me call him, the way he would play with me and how he'd lifted me high and spun us. Haim-chan. They made it much worse. For 3 days after that, I found myself kept glancing at the door, waiting for someone that I subconsciously knew would never come home again. It was scary, the way his gaping hole of absence felt like. As if there was a Papa-sized hole on my heart. He felt like a bright light snuffed by the cruel wind, and his smoke remains forever in that place. It made me depressed. Mama noticed it, of course. Even through her own grief, she never forgot to take care of me, acting as if there were nothing wrong. Except I heard her crying to sleep every night, the occasional snuffles when she suddenly remembered him, and the red eyes and trembling lips. So I decided to be independent. I couldn't expect an easy life from now on, as Mama would have to work to support us both. I'd to start taking care of myself and not be a burden to her. She's got enough to take care of. Even so, Mama said nothing to all of it. But then, at the third night, Mama unexpectedly say something. Shizu-chan, tomorrow we're going to have Papa's sea cremation. The cremation is a funeral. I've never gone to a funeral before in this life. But in before, I'd have to bury my third cousin that I considered my aunt. The process before burial took 3 days, as people came to see her lying lifelessly on the case. The door is transparent, so we could see her all dolled up and surrounded by flowers, hands holding a cross. The room smelt like flowers for dead people, and it was all I could smell for days after. The cremation was just as horrible as that. Instead of 3 days, we only did it 1 day. Mama and I along with some friends went to the cremation place where Papa's body went into one of the giant stone room that gave off heat and the scent of fire when opened. It was akin to an oven, and the thought of it made me hysterically cried. We waited for what seemed like forever, and then one of the worker gave Mama a ceramic jars where inside laid Papa's ashes. Said jars was put in a table near the television, and next to it was Papa's smiling face inside a frame. On the other side of the picture is a small plate that Mama put an apple at. Shizu-chan, look, it's Papa's little altar. You can put things for him that you want in this table, including food. You can also pray for him in front of this table too. Let's keep his memory alive, okay? Hi, Mama. At 3 years old and 6 months, I was a pretty responsible daughter. It was hard at first to be independent, especially because of my clumsy limbs, but I managed. Baths, washing the dishes, those simple things. I was practicing sweeping, but I hadn't managed to do it correctly yet. And well, if Mama wondered why some places have many dusts while others don't, cough under the furniture's cough, well, I don't know anything. Life had gotten hectic since Papa's gone. 2 weeks ago, Mama had decided to move us into an apartment as she couldn't support us well if we continued living in our house. She sold it and took only the important things, furnitures being left behind. The apartment was a lot smaller compared to our house. It only had a living room that are merged with the kitchen and dinner room, a terrace, 1 bathroom, and 2 rooms. It was pretty big for an apartment, I guess. At least Mama and I still could live comfortably, even if the building seemed suspicious at first. From 8 in the morning until 5, Mama had to work as a senior secretary. Turns out, she was pretty amazing at her job before she was pregnant with me, and her old boss had recommended her to his friend that's just as high in place as him. And as I didn't want to be left with some shady nanny, I was taken to a nearby daycare. It was amazingly boring. The kids are kids and I couldn't blend in. I wasn't as childish as them and was uncomfortable with their brash or girly attitudes. As a result, they thought me weird and some even started to make fun of me. Like now, when all I want was some sleep and peace. Hey Shizuka, why are your hair 2 colors like the? Glancing around, I noted that my shield in the form of one of the carers had went off to take care of the bickering children on the other side of the room. I looked up at him pointedly said, "Your hair is blue, and it's the shape of a moon." He took it as well as a 3-year-old kid did, as an insult. Well, at least mine's not like a broccoli. Wah! I gaped incredulously at the nerve of this kid. No one insults my hair like that. Yeah. He's starting to look smug now. And at least I have my daddy, unlike you, you stupid broccoli. Before he finished, I had kicked him on the stomach with all the energy I had. Sleep was the last thing on my mind now, and I didn't even care about the broccoli insult anymore. I was so done with it. So I ran to the door, and out as far as I can from the daycare. I pretended as if the daycare was the world, that by running, every single problems I had would disappear. I was so fucking done. I was done with that stupid kid whose name I don't even know and his stupid insults. Done with the daycare, with my mom who I felt was getting farther from me. I was done being responsible, done with hearing my mom crying to herself nearly every night. I was done with myself, done with crying and sorrow and everything. I punched a tree with my fist, wincing at a painful throb on said fist. And then I looked around, having realized that I'd run into the private forest near one of the park on my new house's building. I didn't even realize I'd ran this far. Exhaustion set in, and I found myself falling to my butt. I tucked my knees in front of my chest and hugged it, trying to dispel the sudden feeling of loneliness I got. If anything, it just made my eyes teary. Stupid reincarnation? I whispered in the cover of Yellow Leaves. I wished I was back with Dad. And Daniel, that crybaby, is he crying now? Is this how he feels after I die? With a sniff, I wiped the fallen tears with the back of my sleeve, trying to stop crying. Must have been Mama's or Papa's genes, since I wasn't an overly emotional person before. Just as I was about to cry again, a voice from behind me made me jump in fright. Are you crying? I put a hand on my chest, trying to calm the sudden rise of heartbeat. Once I was calm enough to think straight, anger rushed inside me and I turned around, ready to yell at him. How dare this little kid? It was Bakugo Katsuki. Even though he was a bit younger than his 4-year self, I'd still recognized him right away. Those ash blonde tufts that sticks out everywhere, and the red eyes and smug grin on his face. Is he laughing at me? No, I'm not. Hastily, I wiped my eyes to rid of the tears that had gathered there. You are. What? This kid is pointing his finger at me. Shut up, I barked, my face blushed slightly at the embarrassment. How does Bakugo be so frustrating even at 3 years old? Why were you muttering to yourself? A curious glint appeared on his eyes. You're not crazy, are you? This kid. Just when I thought he maybe wasn't as annoying as I thought, he'd gone and destroyed it. I swear, with how angry I was, I could feel a vein popped out on my forehead. Worse, Bakugo wasn't affected any bit by my glares. No, I'm not. Just leave me alone already. Good, the grin was back on his face, but it was more genuine now. 'Cause I don't want to be friend with a crazy. I'm Bakugo Katsuki, nice to meet you. Absolutely. Bewildered. I didn't understand what this kid was thinking. 1 second he insulted me, the next he's saying he wanted to be my friend. How does his brain even work? Right? I replied unsurely when I noticed he was waiting for my answer. My name is Midoriya Shizuka, I guess. You don't know your name? Are you stupid or what? I swear I'm going to kill him. Sometimes, things aren't always easy for me. I'm not always the carefree girl who's got a devil-may-care attitude on her. I'm not always easygoing or serene or kind. I'm a human too, I have my limits. And sometimes, something went past that limit, unconsciously or not. Even the smallest thing could trigger me in a bad day. And that day, it was a bad day. It was a month after that runaway I did, and Mama was very worried for me. I felt bad that I was glad I got to spend the rest of the day with her. She had been working so hard even at home, that she didn't have time for me. We went to have some ice cream and eat outside. It was an amazing night. But I suppose it had spoiled me. I started to think Mama would started to have time for me, but of course I was wrong. A month after, and she was as busy as always. I wanted to be angry to her, but I wasn't that stupid. I knew she worked hard for me, saw her eye bags and tired body. All the guilt just built up and I started to blame myself. How can I be angry at her? After all her hard work for me. She's still grieving, she'll never stop, and she has done so much for me. But why did I even be angry at her? I should be glad for everything. All the dark thoughts are clouding my head, and I felt numb. Like I was in a never-ending abyss, couldn't see what's around me, just floating for a very long time. I couldn't even feel anything, couldn't let myself feel anything. It was my coping mechanism since before, and I knew it wasn't healthy, but I didn't know what else to do. I just feel so tired, so useless and a burden. I didn't know what to do. God, why was I reborn again? Shir-chan, what are you doing? The voice jolted me out from my dark thoughts. I looked up to ruby eyes staring at me. The intensity in his childish face startled me. How can someone so little be so smart, so observing? The intelligence in his eyes that I hadn't noticed before now shone brightly. Realizing I hadn't answered his question, I looked down to my hand to saw that it had moved on its own while I was wallowing in thought. My previously decent, for a 3 years old, drawing has turned into an incorrigible one. It was so horrible I felt my frustration increasing. Obviously, Bakugo's observant nature once again showed. Whoa, that's a stupid drawing. I swore the pencil in my hand snapped in two at that comment. Bakugo might be observant, but that never stopped his running mouth. He definitely knew which button to push. Just as I was reminding myself that murder is indeed a crime, I felt a body slightly bigger than mine invading my space, clumsily dropping himself next to me and nearly pushing me out the chair in the process. I caught myself in time, and went to yell at him. My voice faltered before it even went out. Next to me is a boy whose head is so close to the table his blonde hair nearly touched it. In his small hands are crayons he had carefully picked. His ruby eyes that I found intimidating was so focused to the drawing he's determinedly fixing. His eyebrows furrowed a bit, painting him in an adorable way. I felt my anger deflating and logic returning to my brain. Ever since meeting him, I'd been so harsh and inconsiderate to him. I'd closed off from him, even though he always tried his hardest to befriend me. I'd treated him like he doesn't deserve, and still he helped me. I just I was so scared, so determined not to be bullied by him like Izuku had been. I thought the first step was not to be his friend, so I tried to fend him off. I'd been living in my fear the whole time. Who's to say I'll be like Izuku? I'm not Izuku. I'm not analytical, or naive, or friendly like him. I'm just Shizuka. I'm me. And well, one thing about me is that I get attached easily. The whole time, I was just denying my growing affection for Bakugo. And God, he was just a kid. He was insecure and crave others' attention just like every kid does. That's why he hated Izuku, because he felt belittled by him. Even at Yui, he was only a teenager. He was entitled to be ridiculously immature. I knew this from before. Bakugo had been my favorite character. His development is amazing. But in my childish fear and attempt to protect my heart, I buried it deep inside my head. I guessed I was a child after all, no matter the fact that I'd lived once before. Look, Shirchan, this is how you draw good. He pointed to the drawing that was now full of yellow and red and green, the dull black and blue nearly covered. Behind his proud and excited expression, I could see the insecurity and fear of rejection. He made a perfect puppy eyes. How could I be so mean to him again? Yeah, it's amazing. Kaken. I smiled at him, all teeth to show my gratitude. Unknowingly, he had dragged me out of the abyss I frequently fall into, and lead me to the light. Thank you so much, hero. He is one of my heroes, after all. Time flies much quicker when you're in school. Kaken and I had attended kindergarten weeks ago, and things had gotten better. Mama still wasn't home often, but she had started to adjust that she wasn't overwhelmed any longer. I had met Kaken's parents, Mitsuki and Masaru, and we got along splendidly. They thought I was a good influence for their excitable and short-tempered son, and I found my aunt and uncle figures within them. I even often visited their house when Mama got home late, which is increasing. Kaken made his debut in kindergarten by always taking number 1. Number 1 most good-behaved kid, number 1 in rank, number 1 in confidence and friendly personality and everything else. He's even the tittiest kid in the grade, tied with me. I, however, had a little less flair debut. I was known as a calm and intelligent kid, unusual. I tied and ranked 1 with Kaken, but I'm not friendly like him. I didn't want to make friends with children, so I made no effort. I only tried to be friendly when they did it first, so everyone learned to leave me alone. I was always with Kaken and vice versa, that adults thought us cute. The female teacher, Momoka-sensei, even said we're best friends forever aka BFF. Do they even use that word still? Thankfully, Kaken felt the same way as me. We started to discreetly avoided Momoka-sensei in fear of being called even more disgusting things. I might like it before, but I definitely did not now. Anyway, because of Kaken's friendly and energetic deposition, he'd got tons of friends. Everyone wanted to be his friends. He easily became the most famous kid in kindergarten. I wasn't even surprised, honestly. Kaken's always got a charm in him that no one had. But even then, he sticked by me. He never even once forget about little old me. It made me love him even more. Regardless, Kaken had his own circle of close friends beside me, who he dubbed his only best friend and I better be yours too, Shirchun. His close friends included Asahi Kato, a mild-mannered boy with gray eyes, Yuzashi Goro, a fat boy with bald head and big red wings. He's one of the first to manifested a quirk, and Hamada Yuma, a thin boy with sharp features. I didn't mind them, really I didn't, but Kaken became meaner when he was with them. Kato I'm okay with, but Goro and Yuma are nasty kids that thought themselves bigger than others. They never outright say it, but I could see it from the way they acted. This is easy. Kaken voiced. He was juggling a soccer ball with both his foot without dropping it once. Kato had challenged him after seeing it on the TV last night. Of course, Kaken didn't turn down the challenge and instead his natural instinct made him succeed. Whoa, sugoi Katsuki, you can do anything. Kato-kun praised. Goro and Yuma echoed with the same grins on their faces. Shirchan. Kaken turned to me. He'd noticed I was silent, and with a proud grin wandered off to me with the ball held in his hand. Did you see? I was like a pro footballer. I giggled, yeah, you're cool, Kaken. But I think that was still far from a pro. He pouted, "Well, what about you? Can you do it?" "I don't know." I shrugged, taking the ball from his hand. I hadn't played football since I was a sophomore in before, so I was rusty. But the ball bounced good enough in my feet before dropping to the ground. I hadn't done it as long as Kaken managed to, but the rest had cheered on me anyway. I ignored the whispers of how I wasn't as good as Kaken, and instead focusing on my best friend's proud grin. The grin was so sincere I couldn't help but returned my own to him. "You are as amazing as me, Shirchan. Someone need to keep up with you, Kaken." Kaken and I went home together, as our houses are in the same direction. "Shirchan, are you coming to my house today?" he inquired, his eyes taking in our surroundings. The street we took were full of shops that half of them I never even entered. I shook my head no, as Mama said she wasn't going to be late today, but found Kaken's interest wasn't on me anymore. His ruby-red eyes are focused to the big TV in the display glass next to him. It was showing All Might, the #1 hero, surrounded by 4 villains as big as him. Predictably, he beat the villains quickly as if it wasn't hard at all. All Might didn't even get scathed. "All Might's amazing, isn't he?" Kaken said, "He's the #1 hero. He always win no matter what. I want to be a hero like him, Shirchan. I want to never lose like him. That's why I'll defeat everyone including All Might and become the #1 hero." He stared at his best friend's green eyes, trying to discern the emotions in them. He always loved her eyes. They shines brightly like she does, and showed her emotions clearly. That's why he willed himself to look at her straight. Will she ridicule him? Or will she lie and said she believe in him? Katsuki-kun kind of look like a villain, isn't he? Katsuki fits better as a villain, not a hero. But why did they say I'm a villain? That's not true. Just because I have red eyes and sharp teeth doesn't mean I'm a villain, right? Yeah, they're probably just amazed at me. Amazed or afraid. But why did they all say that? Stop it, stop. I'm not a villain. I want to be a hero. I want to be like All Might. I want to be the #1 so no one can say I'm bad and a villain anymore. Stop doubting me. Why can't they believe me? Why did they laugh? I'm going to be a hero, not a villain. Stop saying I'm a villain. Believe in me. Why won't they believe in me? I'm worth looking at. I'm worthy of being a hero. I'm strong enough. I'm not a villain, never a villain. I'll make them believe in me, I'll make them see me, even if I have to force them all. Out of everyone, I think if anyone can beat All Might it'll be you, Kaken. The sincere voice snapped him out of his dark thoughts. The doubts, the laugh in their eyes, the disbeliefs and the ridicules. Everything faded in front of Midoriya Shizuka. The memories were no more. Instead it was his best friend in front of him, giving her soft smile to him that always made his heart beat faster in a good way. Her smiles always managed to encourage him to be better, to push himself more, and on the occasion, it made him remember the warmth of the sun upon his skin. "She's sun, my sunshine. I want to be a hero too, Kaken. Can we be heroes together?" she asked. "Of course. We'll be the bestest of the bests. But I'm not going to be a sidekick, I'm going to be a hero," she said again. "I know." He grinned. After all, his equal couldn't be less than a hero. He couldn't wait to see the days they finally made it as heroes. The day Kaken got his quirk, everything started to change. 3 days after his birthday, his quirk suddenly manifested when we were playing on our playtime in the kindergarten. His palms just suddenly started letting out small exploding sounds that surprised everyone. Before they realized it was his quirk though, I practically ran to him. "Whoa, it sounds like fireworks, Kaken," I told him, grinning ecstatically. It's amazing that he finally got his quirk. Kaken had been waiting for this after all. "But don't get too cocky, I'm going to catch up to you soon enough." "I know, Shirchan. I can't wait to see your quirk." His attention was quickly taken by the others who had realized it. "Amazing, Katsuki-kun. Lucky. Wow, that's an amazing quirk," Yamazashi-sensei praised. "It really is. It's a flashy quirk just right for a hero, right, Katsuki-kun?" Momoka-sensei smiled. "No, stop feeding his ego." I could remember the thoughts Kaken had from the canon. "No one is as amazing as me." That's what he thought. Thankfully, the Kaken I know didn't seem to think like that. He was grinning widely at the praises, but he had turned his head to me even when he was surrounded by the attention he craved. The challenging fire in his eyes said everything he didn't. Challenge accepted. The day after, in Saturday morning, Mama and I went to the hospital for a booked meeting with a quirk specialist. Everything was so unreal, as if I was playing my own life as a game, not that that wasn't far from the reality, unseeing instead of seeing. But now, standing in front of the quirk doctor, my heart beating so loudly it might beat the doctor's voice, it felt so surreal. I was really going to find out whether I was Izuku's replacement or my own person. Will I get the same fate as his? Quirkless, friendless, bullied. But no matter how hard I prayed, my prayers still went unanswered. I'm sorry, but you should probably give it up. Thump, thump. The sound of my heartbeats were as loud as a lion's roar. It was slowly drowning out the doctor's voice, and the reality that I lived in started to sharpen in edges. Normally, by the age of 4, she would have manifested one of her parents' quirks or the combination of the two. As she was still 3 years old, there should be plenty of time. But by looking at this toe joint, the probability is very small. Everyone who have quirks? I couldn't even hear anymore. The reality is punching me on the stomach hard. I'm not going to have a quirk. I'm just Izuku's replacement. I'm just him. Excuse me, I need to go to the toilet. Without waiting for an answer, I slipped through the door and ran like a cheetah was chasing me. The tears had blurred my eyes and I could care less of where I was going. People parted from me as I went by, closing myself in the elevator until it opened by itself and then ran out again. If I wasn't so wrecked, I'd noticed how silent and empty the floor was. But I could only hear my heartbeat and dark thoughts. Finally ran out of breath, I looked up to find myself in front of a door. There was nothing special in the door, except there was no nameplate next to it. In my hopelessness and angst, curiosity won the best of me and I opened the locked door with my bobby pins slowly. The door made no sound, and I heard no sound from the inside, so I assumed there was no one. Instead, I found the biggest room in a hospital with one single patient. Lying inside. He was hooked with tubes and machines from his head to his leg. Bandages covered his neck, hands, and leg. The rest was full of bruises and cuts that were healing. His heartbeat machine was echoing his heart in the silent room, giving a foreboding sense. The red mane of his laid limp around his head. What? I said softly to the still space. What happened to you? You looked like you're ready to give up. I thought, not daring to say it out loud. The feet of his bed said that he had been here for 2 weeks, and that his name is... Enji? Where'd I heard that name before? After a bit of consideration, I moved my feet to stand next to his bed, my hand touching his wound-littered face as soft as I could manage. Don't give up, I whispered. It's okay to be tired once in a while, but don't give up. Keep fighting, okay? The man gave no indication of hearing me, but I continued anyway. I'll visit as much as I can, so you better get better, Enji. I'll see you next week, alright? Somehow, seeing this big man laying lifelessly in the bed, chained with machines as if he couldn't live without them anymore, filled me with a sense of purpose. I might be dramatic, but I swore my senses felt like it was rekindled again. As if he lit a fire inside the dying candle that was my heart. Such a strange thing, feelings. And if I'd looked back, I'd seen the man watching me with clouded emotions, his mint green eyes flashing brilliantly even in his pain. What do you mean you were sick? I gave him a blank stare. That's exactly what I meant. Kaken gave me a suspicious look that made me pretty miffed. When this brat became so untrusting to me? So the last 2 days you were sick? Yeah, I told him, I was feeling a bit under the weather. Unmentioned was the little trip Mama and I took to the hospital. I'm sorry. Kaken stared at me for a few seconds, before apparently deciding that I was saying the truth and nodded his head. The excited spark was back in his eyes. Whatever. Sure, look what I can do now. Without waiting for my answer, he raised his hand in front of him, brows furrowed in concentration. The glare he was shooting could have burned his own hands with their sharpness, and then realization hit me. See, trying to activate his quirk? Last week, after he first activated his quirk, he hadn't managed to do it again. No matter how hard he concentrated or how angry he got, the explosions still wouldn't appeared. But now I mused it's different. There in his sweaty palms were the smallest of sparks. They appeared and went in less than 3 seconds, so brief and little but they were there nonetheless. And if Kaken's tired huff is any indication, it was because he'd worked hard for it. It was something earned, and I remembered a saying from before. No pain, no gain. Good job, Kaken. I gave a genuine smile, heart warmed. His huge smile turned into something else, eyes crinkled, dimples showing slightly, and his red eyes seemed to shone brighter than ever. Kaken was smiling in happiness and pride. And if he shouted and cursed at my flying hug, well, I knew he didn't mean any of it. I was so proud at him. The figure of a looming boy, with fire in his eyes and strength in his grin and conviction in every steps he takes. He was shaping up nicely at the form of the blushing boy in my embrace. Enji is a good hero. He's one of the best there ever is. He specialized in combat and cities, and always makes sure he did a quick work of the villains. Time is precious, and no one wanted him to make a bigger wreck of the surroundings than there was. That's fine, that's logical and acceptable, and Enji acknowledges that his quirk is potent and dangerous. So Enji always made sure he was only in one place for no more than necessary, and the next second he was already moving to the next place that needed a hero. But what's not acceptable is his defeat. Ever since he was a little boy, no more older than 9, he aspired to be the #1 hero. He wants to be above everyone else so that no one would be able to belittle or underestimate him. He wanted to make a name for himself, wanted the whole world to fear and adored him at the same time. He wanted to be the hero. But instead, just as he was rising on the rank, a new figure appeared. In a ridiculous Silver Age costume, the figure blazed in to rescue more than 100 civilians stuck in the burning city, with ease as if it wasn't any problem. He was smiling, laughing like the other heroes hadn't tried and failed, even him, to do so. As if the mysterious enemy wasn't strong at all, and though their fight was intense and dragging, he emerged victorious and still grinned afterwards as if he wasn't exhausted at all. All Might. They called him the victorious hero, and they predicted he'll become #1 in no time. And they were right. Not only he became #1, he's also the symbol of peace. And it had been nearly a decade since then, and Enji was still stuck beneath All Might. Always the #2, never the priority, never the best. The hero name he was convinced the people would look up to became a name he loathed and felt indifferent at once. Endeavor. The flaming hero. The #2. The second. He doesn't understand. But why does All Might have to be #1? Every single year the ranking is counted, All Might's name is always on the very top, with golden crowns and massive applause and everything Enji wanted more than anything else. But every time, All Might never failed to look surprised, and was always flustered and uncomfortable at the attention, so why him? Deep inside, he knew why. All Might's always so bright and pure and everything good, even though he's not good at socializing, but he truly cares for everything. His smile, even at the worst situation, never failed to pick others up. They give the will to fight, to not give up. Everyone know All Might will never let them down. Enji knows. Regardless of all his hard work, Enji never made it as #1. And it's not just because of the bumbling fool that is All Might, but because of the peers and people. The vote of the rank is always on their hands, and they never chose him. Even though Enji's quirk, Hellfire, is amazing, even though he now have more than 50 sidekicks and more fighting for the position, even though the people always thanked him after a job done well. Enji doesn't understand giving up. But he does understand searching for another way. If Enji couldn't beat All Might, then at least he'll make someone does. Someone of his own blood, under his tutelage, that bring his convictions and mind with them every step they take. It's only logical to have kids. So he searched for women who have amazing and potent quirks, something suitable with his own. And he found her, coming from a middle-class family that was threatening into bankruptcy, with a quirk that enabled her to generate ice as much as she wants. Mizuno Rei. And with a little bribe of money, she soon became Todoroki Rei. And then, as per their contract, they have kids. 4 of them, now, as the last 3 wasn't what he'd hoped, but Shoto's split appearance might indicate an inheritance of both fire and ice. So Enji was quite happy with the life he has now. Everyone in the house knows he's the head. No one dared to go against his word except for the rare stunt Hitomi sometimes pulled. A bit of discipline, and everything went as it should be. And of course, that was the moment Endeavor falls. A strong villain with a poor match of his quirk, and Endeavor was set to knock him out with some burns, but his partner who was supposed to be unconscious had waken up at the last seconds and Endeavor was hit. A painful use of his quirks and a pair of unconscious villains later, Endeavor hit the floor. He stayed in the peaceful feeling of nothingness for who knows how long. For a little while, there was nothing. Some snippets of conversations of the doctors and nurses, but nothing else. It was peaceful. It was also too quiet and unsettling. And yet Enji couldn't find the courage to wake up. The nothingness felt too comforting. What happened to the world while he was gone? He wondered. What happened to the compound? What about his rank, his status, the villains he caught? He realized, then, no one actually really needed him. The world has All Might and other heroes, and his household doesn't really need him to stay that way. He was just a shadow figure, just there, being the head and number two because someone have to. If it wasn't him, someone else could have done it. Don't give up. In the confine of his mind, the voice echoed and snapped him. It felt like waking up as if he was drowsing before. Don't give up. Keep fighting. Enji struggled to open his eyes. He's tired of this, he wants to be awake and do something and find it those bastard villains are imprisoned yet. When he finally opened his eyes, it was to the sight of a curly hair slipping away through the door. The quiet click indicated she locked the door and all was silent once again. Enji fell into an exhausted sleep once again. Who are you? The voice startled me so bad it made me jump and turned around. In the bed, fully awake, was the stoic figure of the fragile man I saw a week ago. His green eyes stared daggers at me, and I felt very much like a caught thief. I wasn't, though, so I tried to shove the humiliated blush off and said the first thing in my mind. Have you showered? By the frown he was sending me, I could tell he didn't appreciate my smart mouth. I didn't meant to say that, as I was usually a rather polite person, but I feigned a nonchalant attitude. He's intimidating and I can tell he's used to get what he want, but I can't let that get to me. I mean, how are you? My name is Midoriya Shizuka, by the way. I tried to smile, but it fell quick at the sight of his deepening frown. You're not supposed to be here. A sentence of disapproval tone, and I froze up. What did that supposed to mean? This world, this universe? Did he somehow know about my rebirth thing? Maybe it's his quirk? He raised an eyebrow, while still frowning. I didn't know how he did that, but mind you, frowning is looking up to be his specialty. At my silently panicking form, how did you manage to sneak in? The door is always locked and only 2 people have the key. One is currently looking at you. Crisis averted. I picked the lock. I showed him my trusty booby pins, smiling innocently in the way that always irked Kaken. Instead, the man seemed curious and disgruntled at the same time. Enji-san, aren't you supposed to be in a coma? I asked, discreetly searching his person for indications. His face was free of blemishes and even the breathing mask wasn't there anymore. The casts around his leg and hands also seemed to be thinning. He didn't look like he was just in a coma, not that I know what it looked like. How'd he be able to heal so much in a week? I wondered. How do you know my name? The green eyes sharpened, and his voice was akin to a bark with how demanding it was. I read. So you've been here before? He concluded with a strange glint in his eyes. I was just lost? The meek reason disappeared under the bloodlust grin he gave me. You dare to sneak into a place obviously private and locked, not once, but twice. And who knows how many times you've done it with me sleeping? I cowered now. I could have charged you with prison for at least a year. WWA. Please don't, Enji-san, Enji-sama. I waved my hands around me in a frightful gestures. I didn't mean anything bad, I swear. I'll do anything. Anything? The frightening grin was back. Oh no, Shizuka, what had you gotten yourself into? I didn't get to find out what he meant by anything, as we were caught by a nurse. The nurse was just doing her regular checkup and surprised, what an understatement, to find me there. She'd inquired how I get in, and even scolded me, but NG had stopped her by saying that he allowed me to. And to tell the receptionist to add Midoriya Shizuka under those with the permission to visit him. At that, the nurse had given NG a strange look, as if wondering how and why this little girl but clamped her mouth shut. Instead, she did the checkup without another word, almost as if she was respectful or fearful toward NG. Said man paid her no mind, instead saying that he expected me to be back an hour earlier tomorrow. The clear dismissal had me riled up, but the clear threatening gleam in his eyes reminded me. I had no way of knowing if he was right, and if he didn't, well, didn't he look rich? He could just bribe the police if he wanted to. Even the nurse seemed respectful to him. Who's evil enough to send a 3-year-old kid into a prison for a year and possibly more? NG, that's who. When I arrived home, the sun was already setting. The street was shining with shadows of burnt orange and fading red from the sky. It was beautiful, but a reminder that I was late. And true, when I got home, Mama was already waiting at the door. Shizuka-chan. Where've you been? She fretted, hugging me for a second before wringing her hands worriedly. I appreciated her worries, I really do, but I knew it was all because of my newly found quirkless status. She felt guilty as if it was all her fault. My reassurances that it wasn't went unheard. But I also knew that this was her way of reconnecting with me. She was trying her best, and it would be unfair of me if I denied her that. Besides, I knew I was starved of parental attention anyway. So I relished it all with a tired smile. Walking 6 blocks to the hospital and then 5 blocks back was tiring to my little body. Sometimes I forgot how young I was now. I was just playing with Kakin, Mama. I forgot the time, sorry. I quietly said, taking off my jacket. Oh. The relieved sigh clenched my heart. I smiled, feeling guilty that I made her worry so much. She brightened quickly though. Do you want to take a bath first or dinner? I made a katsudon, Shizu-chan. She smiled, looking excited. Can I have a bath first, Mama? Of course. Ah, do you us to have a bath together, honey? I missed our little bath, you know. No need to say, I zipped out there faster than I'd ever run before. That's so cool, Katsuki. Yuma grinned, sharp teeth shone. Bakugo Katsuki smirked smugly, inhaling all the praises that were recently coming more and more for him. Ever since his quirk showing a few weeks ago, people had liked him more than before. The other children in the kindergarten even followed him around, just like his 3 new friends, Yuma, Kato, and Goro. Lately his days were spent with them, walking around the blocks and playing until sunset. And each time he did something amazing, something none of them could do as good as him, he was praised. Life had never been this good. No stretch that. It had been better, Katsuki frowned, it was better with sure, no matter how many times I got praised. Sure-chan's company is still better than anyone else's. With a scowl, Katsuki wondered for the millionth time where his best friend was. This hadn't been the first time she was missing in their adventures. Lately, she was acting weird and making excuses to miss out their outings. A few days after he got his quirk, she even lied to him about her being sick. Of course Katsuki knew when she was lying. He was her best friend after all. He knew her better than anyone else. Something was going on, and it irked him badly that she didn't tell him what. Katsuki swallowed the bitterness rising in his chest. Katsuki-kun, Kato called as he played around with a pebble. Where's Shizuka-chan? She rarely play with us anymore. He grunted in reply. Nah, I bet she got new friends already. Goro said casually. Katsuki's eyebrow twitched, an indication that he was starting to get irritated. Maybe she's playing with them and she's too busy for us anymore. Yuma suggested, not feeling any sadness at his own suggestion. Midoriya Shizuka had always been more of Katsuki's friend and the other 3's acquaintance. They were not close in the slightest. He got annoyed by her sometimes, even, and he knew that Goro and maybe Kato felt the same way. Whenever she was with them, she always stole Katsuki's attention and away from any fun stuff. And everyone knew how Katsuki and her always stuck together, that even he preferred her than Yuma, Goro, and Kato. Why, no one knew. She's a girl, and girls and boys didn't mix together. Clearly, Katsuki didn't agree. Because he quickly stood up to Shizuka, Anger started to creep on his brain at the unintended insult of his and Shizuka's friendship, best friendship. "Shut up," he barked. "She's just not feeling well, that's all. Stop talking about her like that, you understand?" The other three gulped and nodded obediently. Katsuki started to think of them as goons and not friends. Really, they reminded him of the submissive servants on the movies. The itchy feeling in the back of his heart remained. I swore up and down as I was forced to go to the hospital again. It was my 6th time to the blasted hospital, not counting my Quirk appointment, and I was so done already. The reason why I was swearing so heavily if a sailor heard he would have been impressed, and was reluctantly walking to the white building right after kindergarten let out? As in, that anything I owed to a certain red-haired rich man in return of his leniency on me breaking into his very private hospital room while he was and wasn't sleeping. Yes, that cursed debt and my cursed mouth and the fudging cursed 6 blocks away hospital. The debt turned out to be me doing everything he demanded, even if it included going there nearly every day, at 2 p.m. and not a second late. Whenever I arrived at the hospital, he didn't actually demand outrageous things I dreaded he would. Instead, all he asked were some preferred foods and drinks from the canteen, and I suspected my company. It must got lonely in that big room. And he never failed to do it every time. Hey, in my defense, he looked every part of a rich man used to everything handed to him in a golden platter. Still, he was thoroughly an asshole. There was just no better word. He kept teasing and annoying me even though he was still attached to an 4 and couldn't move that much. "You certainly looked every part at 2 years old. Can you take my food from the canteen without sweating, Oju-sama? Such a chibi. Your height truly fits." On and on and on. Somehow he always succeeded making me mad. And I swore he was a sadist. Once after he teased me, I saw a small evil smirk on his lips that was gone when I blinked not a second later. But that wasn't my imagination. I really saw it. That man. I whimpered inwardly when I finally reached the front of the hospital. What did I do wrong to God to deserve this cruel fate? I was such a cute kid too. I pouted, slumping when I felt the amused glances the nurses sent me. After the 3rd of 4th visits, the majority of them had recognized me as the private patient's little tagalong. No one even had the decency to hold their amusement in my presence. Sighing a bit miserably, I was about to pass the receptionist table. The receptionist and I both were so used of my presence already that we just kept to ourselves, when I saw something white in the corner of my eyes. It was a white-haired young woman, with a little girl with red-streaked white hair and a boy around my age with split hair colors each holding onto her hands. 2 older boys, one red-haired and the other white, playing to themselves on a bench near the woman who was obviously their mother. At my first glance, my thought was, the kids kinda look like Enji, and then nearly gave myself a whiplash with how fast I threw my head on their direction. Especially on the littlest kid. Because split hair. As in, split hair with caps lock because who else got hair like that beside Todoroki Shoto? And wait, then that mean the woman was Mrs. Todoroki whose name was never mentioned in the story, so far that I knew. I couldn't resist glancing at the 2 playing boys again. Could one of them be Dabi? Maybe the red-haired one? What a wonderful thing, Todoroki theory was. One of the main villains as one of the main protagonists' long-lost brother would certainly be interesting. And if that was true, well, now that I was here, I could try and find out what actually happened in the Todoroki family's past. And then I finally realized something vitally important. And nearly shrieked and banged my head into the wall for my stupidity. They looked like Enji because he's their father. Enji, as in Todoroki Enji, the number 2 hero. Endeavor. Oh shit, Shiatiti, my thoughts were running a mile a second. Shit, stupid Shizuka. How could I forget things like that? No wonder he's got a fudging big-ass room and a private floor for himself. He's a famed hero. I took a deep breath, trying to calm down. My head was starting to spin. Wait, that's why his last name isn't written. To protect himself and his family from villains. Shit. Todoroki Enji. Excuse me, but do you know my husband? I said that out loud, didn't I? I reluctantly lifted my head to find a kind pair of eyes in front of me. Absent-mindedly, I noted that her eyes weren't gray like the anime maid, but just very pale blue that bordered white. I wailed inwardly when I noticed 5 more pairs of eyes staring at me curiously. Shit. Shayati. This was so not my day. A bit? I just met him 2 weeks ago. I winced at the barely heard sentences. My lips darted through my lips in an effort to wet the suddenly dry sensor device. From the slight narrowing of her eyes and the sudden understanding in them, she heard my. That's really, how did you met him? I thought he was still in a bad condition 2 weeks ago. She asked sincerely, eyes glancing to the watching receptionist in confirmation. Said receptionist nodded, strains of gray hair shone amongst the brown ones. He was, but when Todoroki-sama wake up, he called for Shizuka to his room without informing us. It caused quite a ruckus when a nurse found her in his room actually, but Todoroki-sama straightened things out and little chibi there has been in his list of people allowed since then. I glared at the middle-aged woman. Half for the chibi use, and the other for being a telltale. And a gossip. And I felt a bit weirded out. Who willingly called that rude, sadistic man with such respectful tone and honorific? Note to self, Receptionist-san is a gossip and an Endeavor fan. Honestly, she continued, some of us even thought she snuck into Todoroki-sama's room without him knowing for whatever reasons. The door's locked, remember? And I don't have the key. I reminded her quickly, cutting off her rambling. If only she knows. In front of me, Mrs. Todoroki hummed in acknowledge. I squirmed uncomfortably in my place. For such a gentle and kind character, her presence surprisingly felt, not heavy but there. Mrs. Todoroki bowed her head slightly for my small body. Your name is Shizuka? I nodded, feeling strangely shy in front of this stranger and the 5 pairs of eyes still following us. Midoriya Shizuka. She gave a kind, reassuring smile. Hello, sweetheart. I'm Todoroki Rei, Enji's wife. This is our children. She gestured to the 2 boys on the bench and the 2 smaller kids hiding behind her skirt. Do you know where my husband's room is? I do. Then, can you lead the way please? I gave her a smile and mustered up my cutest smile. Of course, Todoroki's. And round, round, go the merry round. Todoroki Rei wasn't an angel. Despite her preference to peace, her calm demeanor, and the way she handled everything with gentleness, Rei wasn't blind to her faults. Once, she considered herself a beautiful girl with a bright future. Then a firestorm by the name of Endeavor swept by and destroyed the rose-tinted glasses she hadn't realized she was wearing. She woke up to cruel reality, and she hated him for it. Life wasn't good for a short time, but it wasn't as bad as she predicted. She had everything she could ever ask for, her parents happy, and her husband, as much as she hated it, was great at the intercourse. No matter how lonely she felt. The loneliness went away when she birthed a beautiful baby boy, and 3 more children at the span of 6 years. And in place of loneliness, she was granted guilt. Guilt for seeing her kids got yelled by the man they called father, guilt for not always being able to help them, guilt because she couldn't do anything while her little children's fear and anger grew, guilt because she knew it was her fault for birthing them. Rei was aware of her slowly deteriorating mental health that had occurred ever since Shoto was born. The gleeful look Enji gave Shoto when he saw his split hair might be the one thing that tipped her. There was a huge chance of Shoto inheriting a dual quirk, and if so, his future would only ended up in misery. Her baby boy. Rei didn't want that for her pure boy. She did all she could to give all 4 of her children the love they deserved. She tried to hold on to her mind. She tried once more to make Enji realize that they were all his kids, not Endeavor's. It led to meeting a curious girl, as young as her Shoto, who somehow knew her husband. Her cruel, harsh husband. She couldn't believe the rumors surrounding how Enji was fond of the little girl, that she became his loyal visitor. Midoriya Shizuka certainly was an enigma, but that could wait. They'd arrived in front of Enji's door. Fuyumi and Shoto shuffled their feet in reluctancy, Tuya and Natsuo scowling at the door. Rei was just glad Shizuka seemed to understand their hesitancy, and took a deep breath for herself before raising a hand toward the door. It opened on its own. Holding to the knob was Enji himself. Rei took a moment to observe her husband, who didn't look as bad as she thought, with only a leg and a hand bandaged and an 4 attached to his hand. He ignored them and turned to Shizuka. "You were 15 minutes late," he said with an unimpressed tone and raised an expectant eyebrow at her. Rei winced slightly, recognizing it for the look he often gave their children. If Enji noticed, he didn't say anything. The 3-year-old girl huffed indignantly. I know. I'm going there." She turned to Rei with a smile back on her face. "I'm about to head to the canteen. Do you want something, Todoroki-san?" Surprised, Rei was silent for a few seconds before answering, "Can you please buy 4 orange juices?" "The money. Pay everything with my card, Midoriya," Enji cut off without even looking at her, and turned to his silent children. "Rei, Natsuo, Fuyumi, Shoto, go with short stack over there." It was an order, and Rei huffed before turning to the elevator, his younger siblings following. Before going, Shizuka grabbed Enji's good hand and spoke to him in a low tone. Hitomi couldn't hear anything, but it was the most serious face she had seen the little girl make. And to her surprise, Enji only scowled at her and told her to scram. It didn't stop the pleased grin on Shizuka's face. Todoroki Enji doesn't like being told what to do. That was a fact she knew all too well. And yet, a little stranger somehow managed to do so. The elevator dinged and closed a few seconds later. Rei and Enji stayed in silence before Enji turned to go back inside his room, his 4 wheels making a small noise as it went. "Let's talk inside." Rei followed, taking a seat next to his bed. "How have the kids been?" the man started. "Formalities," Rei thought, "as if we aren't husband and wife already." "They're fine, nothing happened," she answered. "How have you been, Anata?" Enji grunted. "I've been better." "How do you know Shizuka-chan?" "She's a strange girl," he said casually. "She visited me out of her curiosity one day and we struck a deal." Rei raised an eyebrow inwardly, but outward her expression never changed. "You gave her one of your cards?" A slight disbelieving tone colored her question. "You never trusted anyone enough to do so." "Not even me," was what left unsaid. "What am I supposed to do?" Enji growled slightly, teal eyes glaring at her pale blue ones. "I only gave it so she can buy me foods and drinks. I certainly can't, with my condition." Rei was smart enough to realize how bullshit it was. Why would he give a 3-year-old his credit card, and not only give, Shizuka kept it, only for her to buy him food every day? Nurses were certainly more than willing to do that considering his hero status, and didn't hospitals' canteens could deliver their food to patient rooms? Both options were better than having a 3-year-old acted like a maid to him. She knew that her husband knew it too. And yet he still chose Shizuka. Rei repressed an urge to smile. "How much long are you going to spend in the hospital, Enji?" She swiftly changed the subject. "Nearing 3 weeks, at most." "Won't you miss Shizuka, Anata? Our house is quite far from here, and it's likely you won't see her as much as you do now," she told him. As expected, the number 2 hero glared at her, lips curled in an unpleasant sneer. "Don't think this past 2 weeks had changed me into a soft fool." He spat the words as if it was acid. "I could care less about her." No more words were spoken. Still, Rei couldn't stop the hope unfurling in her heart. "Even if you say that, Enji," she glanced to the door leading to the bathroom, "it doesn't erase the fact that you went out the room to check on Shizuka-chan out of worry." It was a start. The tension was awkward in more ways than one. The Todoroki siblings didn't try to engage me in a conversation, instead opting to say a few necessary words to each other while the rest of the time was spent in silence. Even Shoto. Todoroki Shoto. The boy who will overcome his hatred and embrace himself and love himself in the future. The beautiful, beautiful boy who's funny and amazing and pure despite his past. The boy Cass adored and still is. Hadn't dared to try to speak to me. Was I scary or something? It kind of felt like they were wary of me even though I'm younger than the majority of them. "How do you know father?" the red-haired Todoroki asked. A hint of demanding tone I was too familiar with slipped in. Not only his hair and eyes and Quirk, but his personality seemed to resemble his father. I shuddered at the thought of 2 insufferable, sadist Enjis. "One is enough, thanks." On the other hand, bingo. That was what bothering them. if the curious and wary gazes the other three were sending me was any indication. I felt a pang in my head. The Todoroki siblings. They were clearly not fond of their father, even his wife didn't. It seemed the hatred steamed early, and Shoto didn't seem to hate his father yet, so he hadn't gotten his quirk yet. That's good, she thought. Maybe I can change their relationship starting from now. It was kinda stupid, really. The pause. I played with the lemon tea I got. NG won't notice a few yen missing anyway. For a few moments, their eyes never strayed away from me. I sighed in resignation. Fine. I was just wondering by myself, 2 weeks ago. I ran away from my appointment and found myself in front of your father's door, you see, so I picked the lock and found him in a coma inside. Father was comatose? Shoto whispered in surprise. Likewise, the other siblings looked like they never thought NG could become so weak like that. Yeah, and a few days later I decided to visit him. Here I hesitated. Your father? When he was in a coma, he looked so fragile. He was bandaged heavily, and what little skin I could see was very pale. There were so many cables on him, too. My listeners went wide-eyed and Tuya and Natsuo even paled a bit. I smiled gently at their obvious concern. At least they still loved him, even if they disliked him too. I just thought he looked so lonely right there. That's why I visited him again, and to my surprise when I snuck in he was already awake. I made a face, and he caught me on the act, so he blackmailed me to come here very often to buy him food and drink. If I don't, he said he would call the police. Fuyumi giggled. Father really did that? Yeah. He's so bossy. The white-haired boy who I assumed was Natsuo snorted. That's him, all right. Wait. So he blackmailed a 3-year-old to become his personal maid. The red-haired who most likely was Asahi asked incredulously. In a matter-of-fact tone, Shoto piped up. Father is petty. That startled the rest of us into laughing. Shoto joined in, delighted that he made us laugh. But seriously, Shoto's humor was great. His dry humor and dead tone never changed even into the future, and I was glad for that. It was just something so uniquely him. And then the image of little NG whacking a child on the head for stealing his toy appeared in my mind, and I was once again sent into a fit of laughter that had me wheezing noisily. 10 minutes later had us finally heading the receptionist table, where next to it the elevators were located. All 5 of us were in a bliss after that funny remark Shoto made. Tuya's still chuckling once a few minutes, even. I was betting that Shoto would become the little light bulb in Todoroki household, once he was comfortable enough to fight his wariness against his father. He was just brilliant that way. And thanks to him, we finally really clicked. I got along particularly well with Tuya and Shoto, but Natsuo and Fuyumi were great too. They were just more subdued, while Asahi was the passionate and rowdy one. Meanwhile, Shoto and I got along not just because we were the same age, but somehow our personality just matched well. We were even comfortable enough to hold hands while we walk. Father really did that? I giggled in glee. Oh, how fun it was to share someone's dirty secrets. Yeah. He was forced to have me feeding him while the nurse is there. If they know he's already stretching himself, he would be banned from foods besides what the nurses give, pro-hero or not. Shizuka-chan, you really are amazing. Tuya cooed, squishing my cheeks in between his hands. I pouted, which made the others giggling at me. Ugh, Tuya? I abruptly stopped. The pout was gone in a second while my eyes narrowed in surprise and confusion. But the person that I saw had disappeared out of my sight and toward the hospital door. Isn't that Kaken? Without even realizing, my feet had already started to run. My instinct was screaming at me, insisting that it was Kaken, my best friend. Because the stick-up ash-blonde hair was something only a few people have, and I didn't doubt it was him that I saw. And I was right. In front of me was a familiar small figure who's running. His white jacket fluttering slightly on his back. Kaken! I yelled out, trying to reach him. Why didn't he stop? Why wouldn't he? Kaken, stop. It's me, Shizuka. At those words, Kaken abruptly stopped, sending me skidding into his back and made me fall down into my butt. My left palm throbbed where it hit the asphalt, but I took no notice. Kaken? Slowly my best friend turned around and I gasped. His red eyes? the eyes that were always full of excitement and life. Suddenly, it was filled with scorn and brewing rage. It reminded me of the Kaken who hated Izuku, and on instinct, I took a few steps back. Shizuka? He slowly spoke. Stop calling me that name. What? Kaken, W? I said, stop calling me Kaken. He yelled out, fists clenched tightly in a failed effort to stay calm. That's a stupid name. I never liked it, you stupid Deku. My eyes widened, tears started to gather on them. But why did he suddenly get angry? Why did he call me Deku? I thought I'd change the future. I thought we're going to be fine, but why? You've always been like a Deku. He spat out the name as if it was filthy, a useless person who can never do things right. That's you? I stared wide-eyed, numb in front of his rage. That fact seemed to make him even madder, but I couldn't even feel my fingers. It was like I'd relapse back to my numb episodes, and the only person here that could help me out of it was Kaken, wasn't it? No, not Kaken. Not even Katsuki. I don't have the privilege to call him that anymore. I hate you, I hate you. Each words felt like a knife stab on my heart. I hate you, Deku. He ran away, leaving me to watch his back as his words rang in my head over and over again. The tears never made it out before the blackness crowded my eyes, head throbbing painfully. And before I know it, I fainted. Kaken? The rain was pouring heavily, dark clouds circulating upside as the city was filled with the sounds of thunder and water hitting surfaces. Citizens of Tokyo were all hiding in their own houses, with a few left running for safety from the nature. In one of the small parks at Ichigo District, an odd scene was found. A little girl no older than 4 was soaked, but seemingly not taking any care as she sat on a swing. Small legs swung idly as she moved her face upwards. To people who saw, it must be a strange and worrying thing. But I didn't mind any of it. I relished on the feel of rain hitting my bare skin. The earthy scent of rain reminded me that I was still alive. I wasn't waiting for anyone. I knew not to expect anyone to come here. But I wasn't that surprised to find an umbrella suddenly thrust above my face, and I opened an eye to find a glaring red eyes holding it. What are you doing, stupid? He grouchily asked. Red glared unforgivingly at my green. A feeling of fond exasperation hit me. Kaken had always been like that, reluctant in showing his care, and acting tough as if everyone expected him to. Well, they might, but I'd never been them. He knew that, but I guess it was ingrained on the core already. My lips quirked up into a smile. I was enjoying the rain. You know how I love it. He scoffed. Don't con me, stupid. What kind of crazy person gets out at 8 only to sit in a park and get soaked? Me, apparently, but I didn't dare utter it. He'd probably get even angrier at me. Did you have another fight? He asked, eyes suddenly softened even if his voice and facial expression didn't change. I noticed him still standing in front of me, his umbrella covering me while he was slowly getting soaked. You're getting wet. I pushed the umbrella gently back to him, but he wouldn't budge. I'm already soaked, you know. You should take this for yourself. Don't change the subject. He stubbornly remained. I smiled easily. I'm fine, Kaken. It's just a little fight about her work again. For about a few weeks, Mama and I had fights, mostly about her working schedule. It wasn't physical or loud, rather just a cold silence and tears that resulted in both of us swarming with guilt. None of us liked to fight, but I'd gotten rather tense and sassy because she was always home late. Her work was stressful lately that it made her snap sometimes. We're just pouring our stress into each other, I guess. I crinkled my eyes into a smile, pouring, as in raining. See? But I blinked, hands automatically holding my head where Kaken hit me. I was probably staring at him like I'd never see him, which was what I feel right now. I intelligently said. Stop it. I don't like that smile. There was a glint in his eyes that I didn't recognize. And that was a terrible pun, Shirchan. I asked, properly confused. Honestly, I didn't understand him. Let's go home now. He offered a hand for me to take. Back then, I thought that it was okay to not to. There was no one exactly the same after all. Back then, I was also stupidly naive. The pitter-patter of rain against the ground, drops of water falling from the roof and the plants around, along with the scent of rain and fresh earth. It was to this that he found me. Eyes closed, mind deep in a memory that made me melancholy, an old wound of the heart throbbing once again. "What are you thinking about?" A soothing voice, and I smiled without opening my eyes. "Nothing." I paused, just the rain and an old memory. It was silent for a moment. I could faintly heard him taking a seat next to me, and felt a chilling cold oozing from his right side. I laid down my head on his shoulder and hummed to myself. "Are you ready?" I hummed. I knew what he was talking about. It couldn't be anything other than the practical examination I was taking for UA tomorrow. I took the written test already 2 weeks ago. It was easier than I predicted, and no doubt others were thinking so too. The possibility was that it was designed that way so hopeful students underestimate the practical exam and ended up failing badly. I wouldn't be surprised. UA were known for their unique ways of teaching. But I was ready for the practical exam. I had been over to Todoroki Estate. It was that big, regularly to practice for nearly a month now. Shoto himself had been my favorite sparring partner. He knew I was as ready as I can be. It wasn't my physical he was asking, it was my mentality. Tomorrow, I would see Kaken again. Last year when I was homeschooled, I hadn't seen Kaken at all. Our houses weren't that far, and I had the feeling he was avoiding me. It was fine though. I wasn't as bothered as I used to. And I understand about his inferior/superior complex he had. It made him lashed out on me 10 years ago. It was terribly lonely without him. A half-a-year friendship felt like a lifetime, and I had difficulties in adjusting. I missed him, but there was nothing I can do. Shoto most probably knew this too. Over the years, his whole family and I had become friends and even family. Rei felt like my second mother, Fuyumi an older sister, and Natsuo a calm, wise older brother. Tuya was an annoying, mischievous brother/friend, while Enji felt like a father/older brother figure to me. He was still a grouchy bastard, but better than before. While Shoto, he became my best friend and my twin. He understood me and my tendency to fall into silence and gazing to nowhere, and likewise I understood that sometimes he just felt trapped. I smiled into the little crook on his shoulder. "Don't worry about me. You did your acceptance test yesterday, right? How was it?" "It wasn't much different from yours, I think, but perhaps a little more difficult. There are also some aspects they asked of us. For example, our ability to make plans in a short time." He told me in his usual calm voice. Nothing seemed to shake his calm mask. "There will be 4 people chosen each year, 2 in each classes." He continued. I opened my eyes drowsily to the image of the rain nearly slowing down completely. It was a nice feeling, being close to one of my best friends while it was raining. It nearly erased my nerves. "I hope we'll be in the same class." I smiled into his cloth. "Me too." The next morning, right at 5 a.m., I was already out of the house. I was running a little late, so I had to eat my toast and trying not to choke as I ran. It was entirely my fault though. The Todoroki estate was a train ride away from my house, and I'd fallen asleep with Shoto yesterday. When I woke up, they tried to persuade me to sleep over as it was already 10 p.m. But I didn't feel like leaving my mom alone, and so Tuya ended up driving me home with his brand new car. I arrived at 11 p.m. and crashed without setting the alarm clock. A bit struggling later, I found myself standing in front of a private beach. It wasn't exactly private per se, but it used to be full of trash and was a junkyard until it was thoroughly cleaned just 2 days ago. The sound of waves softly hitting the sand was strangely peaceful, and I smiled at the sight of the sun rising on the low sky. It was a beautiful sight, and I was so proud of myself for essentially creating said sight by cleaning the junks. "You're finally here, young Midoriya?" A voice boomed behind me and I jumped a bit. For a big guy, All Might sure was stealthy when he wanted to. "Yagi-sen, you startled me. Also, call me Shizuka, remember?" He gave a sheepish smile. "I apologize, young Shizuka. I didn't mean to. Why are you in your All Might form? Do you want a repeat of last time?" I gave him a teasing smirk and wiggled my eyebrows. To my satisfaction, he reddened slightly and rubbed the back of his head in a sheepish gesture. The last time he transformed with me, we got a rush of women throwing themselves at him. Turned out, the beach wasn't as abandoned as we'd thought. It was a lesson learned that I still shudder about. Those women had glared at me so viciously. All Might turned back into his true form, smoke going out from his body as it turned small until in his place was a short man of skin and bones wearing an oversized clothes. Even his antenna hairs had gone down and became fringes. That's better. I beamed, hugging him for a few seconds as he blushed adorably again. Why do you use your All Might form anyway? I was just... He fumbled, face reddening again until he finally mumbled so quiet I almost didn't hear. I wanted our last meeting to make an impression to you. This man, I thought, is too precious for this world. I put a hand on his shoulder, inwardly grimacing as all I felt beneath was bones and a thin layer of skin. I really felt the urge to feed him, but I resisted. Yasen, I called affectionately, I like you the way you are, muscular or not. You're Toshinori Yagi because you're so kind and always genuinely try to help people. Not because you're the #1 hero. It was why, I thought to myself, I agreed to be his successor and inherit one for alt. A year and 2 months ago. The sakura trees are going to bloom soon, I mused absent-mindedly. The strawberry-flavored ice cream in my hand was halfway done, what with me and my little obsession with ice cream. Nowadays, I craved for it so bad I nearly had it 5 days out of 7. It certainly put a dent on my wallet. Probably my period approaching. I throw the clean stick into the trash can with a miserable sigh. I was still craving for ice cream. Honestly, the abnormally hot weather wasn't helping. I sneak a glance at the little store behind me. I was sitting on its outdoor table, and licked my lips in consideration. Maybe I could buy one more? No way. My wallet is already nearly empty. 5 minutes later found me in front of the ice cream cold box. I probably made a pretty pathetic painting. A 12 years old wandering in front of the ice cream place with longing glances to the box. It was clear I didn't have any money. My fingers itched in its place, and I nearly had to wipe drool from my chin. The lemon pops are dangerously tempting, seriously. But knowing I couldn't buy more until a few days later when I got my monthly money, my shoulders slumped in defeat. I was just about to turn back and made my way home, when a skinny pale hand reached out and took a lemon ice pop towards me. Here, I'll pay for you, a deep voice said. I glanced up, and my eyes widened at the sight. It was a skeletal man. No way around it, he was really skinny and all skin and bones. The XXL-sized clothes he was wearing didn't help either. It kind of looked pitiful at the first glance, but his shining blue eyes told a different story. It was All Might, wasn't it? A glance to his long blonde fringes confirmed it. Some memories from before including about this world may have disappeared, but I still remembered the important things. That included the #1 hero and his life. He must have misinterpreted my shocked look, because he suddenly started to look down and seemed to want to shrink into himself. All Might? His real form was close to his hero look, isn't it? It must be difficult to adjust, even now. Thank you, I said quickly, bowing. But you don't need to do that. I don't really need it, so don't waste your money on me, please. Thank you though, Strangerson. He rubbed the back of his neck, the insecurity slipping away. I just noticed you looking at it for a few minutes. You can take it, I'm just happy to help. I paused before beaming happily. This #1 hero figure. He really was genuine in his kindness. Even when no one recognized him, he still tried to help. Very little people would be willing to do so, especially to a stranger like that. But it was always the little things that matter. All Might really is a hero. Thank you, I said again, not noticing that my smile practically radiating warmth right now. How about we share? He smiled, close-lipped, and I marveled at the difference. Sometimes, I thought that him and All Might were two different personalities. His real form certainly was a lot subdued. What is your name, Hiro-san? He blushed slightly. My name is Yagi Toshinori. My name is Midoriya Shizuka. Nice to meet you, my hero. Back to the present. Have you tried using one for all yesterday, young Shizuka? I nodded excitedly. The feeling of having a quirk was so foreign, but undoubtedly amazing. Yeah. I've tried controlling it and I mostly succeed, but the higher the percentage the hardest it is. Yes, it is to be expected. You need more time practicing to be able to use it fluently as I do. It took me 5 years until I was able to control it fully. He told me. 5 years, huh? Anyway, why did you say this is our last meeting? I glanced up, lips curling into a smile. It somehow became an easy thing to do with him. His presence eased me. Did you think I wouldn't want to meet up with you again after I have one for all? Ah, there he was, blushing again and shaking his head frantically in denial. Really, he was so adorable in a manner that reminded me of a dog. A golden retriever, perhaps. He would look so cute with dog ears and tail. I smiled. No, I just thought that. I giggled. Don't worry, Edison, I'll never forget you. Considering your job at UA and me attending school again, we should be able to meet up a night a week, maybe have dinner or something. How do you know about my job at UA? Well, you said that you moved her to Tokyo to search for a successor, and what better place than a school? Coincidentally, the #1 hero school in Japan is in Tokyo. So I just took a guess, and you proved me right. Yagi slumped. Sometimes I forget you're so perspective, young Shizuka. I giggled again, and reached a hand into my worn-out backpack and threw a lunchbox at him. Here, Yagi-san. Don't forget to eat it. Knowing you hadn't have breakfast yet? I gave him a mock glare. It was one of the reasons I got here late, but I would never missed out on it. Over the year, I've learned that he lived alone in a small apartment, so he had to take care of himself. So I tried my best to help by cooking him easily ingested food with the thought of his nearly non-existent stomach in mind. Without waiting to hear his half-hearted protests, I zipped back my backpack and waved, "Bye, Yagi-san. Wish me luck. Do your best, young Shizuka. I'll be rooting for you." Seriously, Yagi is a blessing in life. The UA entrance door was as amazing as I remember it. The sight of the many teenagers entering it, however, made my nerves hit me right in the gut. There was just so many participants, all of them having made it through the written examination. For a moment, I allowed myself to doubt. What if I won't make it? What if I fail? What would I do then? But it wasn't logical. I've practiced since I was 5, along with Shoto, and even Enji and All Might said my combat prowess was amazing for my age. I took a deep breath. No turning back now. Shizuka. And so it began. Well, Yui really was over everything. The door leading to Class 1A, and every others, certainly fits better for a giant, instead of my normal stature. It was easily 3.5 my height and 4th the size of my body. Interestingly enough, when I pulled the knob of the door, it weighted like every other doors, if only slightly heavier. My curiosity pinging inside me, but I discarded it aside. Here we go, I murmured to myself. After taking a deep breath, I firmed my grip and pulled it fully. The first thing that hit me was the noise. It was pretty loud, and indicate that people was already getting friendly with each others. It was the norm in Japan, but in before, first days usually mean awkward and shy classmates. We weren't quite as bolsterious as some of our Asian counterparts. The class practically screamed friendliness, and I could tell already why they could become friends so fast in the canon. Even Izuku, a shy outcast, made 2 friends in the first day. However, it went without saying that I wasn't Izuku. Despite the possibility of us sharing the same future role, I could describe to you on and on of why we weren't alike at all. Some things couldn't be helped, but most of it was not a match. For example, I hadn't made a friend in Uraraka Ochako and Iida Tenya the day of the practical exam. We were still in the same ground B with Aoyama and some kids from 1B, I noted, but our simply road never crossed. And another example was that I managed to get into the class without drawing excessive attention. With a swift glance on the class, I realized that nearly half of my classmates were already here. Bags were thrown across the desks and chairs were seated so that no one would claim it. It seemed that I wasn't the only one feeling enthusiastic or nervous for this first day at the prestigious academy. I found Shoto right on the last line of seats, next to a girl I knew as Yayorozu. I didn't remember her first name, but I knew she was a rich, intelligent girl with a creation quirk. In front of her was Mineta, who was no doubt seated there only because Yaoyorozu was behind him. The pervert was funny on the screen sometimes, but if he tried anything untowardly, I wouldn't hesitate to kick him where the sun doesn't shine. In front of my Netta was Izuku's chair. There was no way I'd sit there. I didn't want to bait the pervert or something. Beside, I noted, Kaken's seat is in front of Izuku's. He wasn't here yet, and it was slightly shooting to me. It seemed I wasn't as ready to see him as I thought. Nevertheless, I made my way to Shoto. In his right was an empty seat, and next to it, the corner, was also an empty seat. I couldn't remember whose both of those chairs were, but I couldn't care less. I dropped my bag gently to the desk next to Shoto's, and took a seat. Shoto turned to me with a stoic face, something he always did whenever he felt unpleasant emotions, such as awkwardness and nervousness. I was glad that he turned so quickly to me, a sign that he trusted me. Even after 10 years of friendship, I was still happy to receive reassurances on his opinion about me and us. "Good morning, Shoto." He nodded. "Good morning. Did anything happen on your way here?" 2 years ago, I was harassed on my way to school on the public train. I'd put some fear in him and a parting gift of a twisted wrist, but when the Todorokis heard, they went ballistic. Enji personally put on his hero form and visited the man, while the others went with to threaten him. He was put into jail for countless proofs on sexual harassments, but the result was there. They never let me went home by myself when it was late night, and they tried their best to accompany me. Even this morning, Shoto had offered to go to my house and then to Yui together, but I vehemently refused. The Todoroki household was the opposite way to Yui from mine. I allowed him his concerns, and smiled reassuringly. "I'm fine, Shoto. Have Natsuo and Tuya went back already?" He shook his head. "Oh. They decided to return tomorrow. Mother asked me to invite you for a parting dinner in our house tonight. Can you?" I beamed. "Of course I can. You know me, I will never miss Reibasen's cooking. Is there seafood stew?" "Of course." He nodded grimly, as if it was impossible there wasn't. It warmed my heart, and I let a sheepish chuckle escape me. Shoto, as always, managed to relax me. "Excuse me," a polite voice asked from next to Shoto. "Do you know each other?" Shoto nodded to the smiling Yaoyorozu. "We have been friends for a long time." "Ah, don't be shy, Shoto." I nudged him playfully. "We're like twins now, with how synchronized we are sometimes." "Amazing." Yaoyorozu smiled excitedly. "Your childhood must be interesting. And you don't even know half of it." Forgive me. I forgot my manners. My name is Yaoyorozu Momo. It's a pleasure to make your acquaintances. I hope we'll become good friends." She smiled adorably, and I was instantly hooked. "My name is Midoriya Shizuka, pleased to meet you as well. I'm sure we'll become close friends, at least, Yaoyorozu." "Todoroki Shoto. Pleased to meet you." I turned to Koda and Tokoyami, whom seated in front of Shoto and I, with a sudden burst of energy. "Hello, you two, I'm Midoriya Shizuka, nice to meet you two as well." Koda blushed and waved his arms slightly before nodding, all the while making no sounds at all. In front of my best friend, Tokoyami turned and nodded as seriously as Shoto. It made me want to pinch his feathered cheeks. "I am Tokoyami Fumikage, pleased to meet your acquaintance, Midoriya-san." "And you too, Yaoyorozu-san, Todoroki-san," he said in a deep voice. Please don't take any offense about Koda. He's very shy and rarely speak. He didn't intend to be rude. "It's okay, I got it," I waved dismissively. "Deku." I tensed, looking around the class with observant eyes. Just then, someone called me. I locked eyes with one Bakugo Katsuki. His red eyes stared at me in a mixture of emotions I couldn't quite discern. There was slight anger and perhaps sadness? I wasn't sure. But Kaken hadn't changed much. The way he held himself, those instinctive scowls, they still all screamed explosive, dangerous ash blonde. I could see his red eyes slowly taking me in. The tension I hadn't realized I was in was broken like a magic spell, by a red-haired boy greeting Katsuki quite energetically. Kirishima, if I wasn't wrong. Instantly, my body slacked back to my chair. The explosive yells and some curses here and there entered my hearing, but I paid it no mind. "You okay?" Shoto whispered beside me. I nodded, glancing at Yaoyorozu and Tokoyami to find them conversing calmly between the two of them. I knew, though, that they weren't fooled. They saw it, and I knew I owe them an explanation. It was rude to stop the conversation like that. The sound of chair getting dragged came directly from my right, and I turned around to find a brunette with unique bob hair settling herself in. Uraraka Ochako. I blinked, surprised, and a moment later I grinned at her. Hi. My name is Midoriya Shizuka, pleased to meet you. Hi. The brunette grinned. I'm Uraraka Ochako. You can call me Ochako-chan though, Midoriya-chan. It's nice to meet you too. Then call me Shizuka, please. I'm not a big fan of honorifics, to be honest. All of a sudden, the class fell silent. A man entered the class in a confident, though no less lazy, strides. His hair was black and messy, with droppy eyes, fair skin, black messy clothes, and a strangely stiff scarf wrapped on his shoulders. A yellow sleeping bag akin to a cocoon was lifted in one arm, while the fingers held empty juice box. It was clear that this man was a busy one. Eraser head. It took you lot 12 seconds to be silent? He said, voice sharp and laid back at the same time. Time is precious, you kids aren't rational enough. Out of nowhere, his empty hand reached into the sleeping bag and pulled out a spotless, brand new P uniform. He held it next to him so everyone could see. My name is Aizawa Shota, your homeroom teacher. Pleased to meet you. His eyes flitted from one kid to another. Go to your changing room, find your own lockers, put this on and meet me in the training field. I'll give you 10 minutes. Everyone was silent. Unmoving. No. We scrammed it out there. Aizawa Shota stared impassively at the bunch of kids standing in front of him. Already, some of them were standing in groups. There were invisible lines in form of half a step away from others, but to his keen eyes, it was clear as day. Snot-nosed brats. Shota gave a thorough glance, noting that all 20 kids was here, and without any care he dropped the bomb. We're going to have a quirk assessment test. They exploded into whispers and half-attempted protests, but he heard all anyway. Yeah? A test? Aren't we supposed to have the entrance ceremony? Orientation? A bob-haired girl spoke wide-eyed to her friends. Shota recalled, zero gravity. I'm not surprised. Yui was known for its effective way of teachings, Ochako-chan. A demure, kind voice said. Creation? A child of pro-hero most likely. There are rumors of last year's whole class of first year being expelled on their first day. Green hair spoke softly. Her eyes flicked to him for a second, and Shota's eyes sharpened. She knows? That girl. Midoriya Shizuka, her quirk was described as Strength Enhancer, but there was no name. Aizawa grinned slightly, even when his brows furrowed. Interesting. Back to the task. If you're done talking amongst yourself, I'm going to explain this once. The test is similar to what you did on middle school, but you have to utilize your quirk the best way possible. 8 different tests, each recorded in this. He showed the device. Know your limits. That is the most rational way to form the foundation of a hero. Shota knew that they felt apprehensive and excited at once. It wasn't enough. Whoever comes in last place in all 8 tests will be judged to have no potential and will be expelled. The kids panicked. Midoriya looked unsurprised, if grim. Shota felt his grin widened. Welcome to Yui's hero course. I will be watching you. After the unnerving, if dramatic, explanation from Aizawa-sensei, we prepared ourselves as best as we could before our turn. The first test was a 50-meter dash. Instantly, Shoto and I moved a bit farther from everyone else and did a small warm-up. We'd learned the hard way how painful cramps and twisted ankles were. And from the corner of our eyes, we watched. This far, one had a frog-like abilities, a speed engine on their calves, a strong tail, a control over gravitational pulls, acid, and even a shining laser. They're untrained, Shoto said quietly. This is likely their first time training their quirks out of necessary. I stood up. But they have potential. Their quirks are varied as well. Midoriya, Bakugo, your turn. Hurry up. Aizawa-sensei called. I felt my muscles tensed more of a habit than anything else. Kaken never looked at me since class. He kept his gaze firmly ahead, and I resolved to do the same. We were in our dream school now, and this test could determine everything. There was just no time for conflict. Get set, go. Predictably, Kakin used his explosions to boost his movements, making small jumps here and there. But in a few seconds, I had him beat and hacking slightly from the dust I disturbed. One for all's residues left my legs tingling slightly, the green light flickers faintly. I used a 10%, and I managed to pass Kakin by 0.5 seconds. I turned away from him. I didn't want to see his reaction. I hate you, I scoffed. Even after 11 years, the words haunt me still. My chest locked for a second before I breathed freely once again, as if nothing happened. I don't need this. I can't be distracted. Aizawa-sensei, I can't be sure he's lying this time around. I can't take any chances. So much depended on me. And with that resolve, I passed the rest of the tests with acceptable scores. Shoto, of course, nearly aced it all. I've seen Yaoyorozu creatively creating things with her quirks, and I was sure she would pass with flying colors. The others didn't seem to do bad. However, at the last test, for the first time, I lost control of One for All. Aizawa-sensei didn't make an effort to erase my quirk, as he likely didn't know because I didn't hurt myself on the practical examination. I intended to use it only at 50%. I was aware it was my last chance to at least boost my score a little. Now or never, a voice whispered in the back of my head. I squared my shoulders. Crackling, green lines appeared on my right hand as I readied myself to throw. The ball on the tips of my fingers. I pushed One for All harder than I ever did before. A sharp pain on my hand, and the ball was thrown high into the sky. 801.3 meters. I smiled painfully. At least it was worth it. The others ooze as it was the first time my quirk usage was clear, but I could feel Shoto's eyes. Sharp, zeroing on the hand hidden in my pants pocket. I tried to ignore the throbbing. Aizawa-sensei gazed at my face with intention, searching for something I didn't know. The man's black eyes stayed on mine for a few seconds more, before turning away. It seemed he was satisfied with whatever he was searching for. I felt another pair of eyes on me, but when I turned, I couldn't spot them. But somehow it felt familiar. I didn't know, but the sharpness was scarily painful for me. And then, the scoreboard was shown. I wasn't the last. In fact, I was the 13th, and on the last place was my Neta Minoru. My mouth clammed up, fear entering my being because what if he was really expelled just because I wasn't the last? My fear was for nothing. And so, our first day in Yui passed with a nerve-wracking test, and little else. From now on, your journey to become a pro hero has begun. His lips quirked into a half-smile, something so small that held an abundance of reassurances to me, and he knew it. However, your journey as a hero has long started. My journey, as a hero? Yes. Pro hero is a mere profession, but you know better than most the difference, don't you? A true hero is someone who is willing to do what is right. The first day of Yui came and passed like an old memory. After the quirk assessment test, we were given the rest of the day off. From what I'd overheard, the rest of the first years were having the orientation to prepare for our next 3 years here while we were busy with the threat of expulsion. It seemed the other teachers and older students were well aware of Aizawa-sensei's little habit already, so no ruckus was made aside from a few confused new students. From that reason alone, I truly realize what an extraordinary man Aizawa-sensei was, and an even extraordinary teacher. In Yui Hero course, we have mandatory classes in the morning, such as English, mathematics, science, and modern literatures. For lessons concerning hero studies, we have foundational hero studies that dominated most of our schedule in the afternoon. It concerned everything a future hero needs to know, and each subcategories lasted a meeting or two only. In the second day of Yui, I arrived with 20 minutes to spare. Embarrassingly enough, I was caught fidgeting in front of the class door by Iida Tenya. He was a rather loud person and a bit naive, from what I remembered. "Midoriya-sen, good morning." He enthusiastically spoke from behind me, and I tried to act as if I hadn't jumped in fright just a moment ago. "Iida Tenya, right? Good morning, my name is Midoriya Shizuka." I went for a half-genuine smile. He nodded. "You're right, Midoriya-san. May I inquire why you're hesitating to enter?" Nothing, just nervous about the paper bag on my right hand, really. Are you nervous? He asked sympathetically. It's perfectly fine, Midoriya-san. I too am a bit nervous, but from what I gathered yesterday, our class have students of great personality and characteristics befitting of future heroes. Looking at his sincere eyes, I realized he was truly nervous about this new life he entered just a day ago. Everything he said is genuine. That's just the kind of person he is. Then you shouldn't be nervous too, Iida-san. I'm reassured now, because of you. I smiled up to him. Thank you, he said, a touch of relief in his voice. I'll try my best to make friends and be a hero everyone can rely on. I grinned. Well, at least you have one friend more now, right, Iida-san? He stammered, pink coloring his cheeks. Unexpectedly, Iida is cute. The second the break bell rung, Shoto took my hand, and before I knew it, we were already in line for today's special menu. Of course, I should have anticipated that, if I'd known the menu schedule. Today was cold soba, Shoto's absolute favorite, and everyone knew how amazing the cook hero, Lunch Rush's cookings are. Not to mention how the price in here was affordable as well. Only the second day, and this had already become one of my favorite aspects of Yui. Where did you get the special schedules anyway? I thought only teachers know. I asked, exasperatedly fond for the teenager walking next to me. On his tray were 2 bowls of cold sobas and a hot tea. My cheeks still felt a bit warm from how some of the upperclassmen and Lunch Rush had laughed at our abrupt appearances and beelining to the specials waiting line. A comically plain upperclassman had even gave me a thumbs up. I asked from my father. Wait, seriously? That's cheating, Shoto. Father hasn't disapproved. You and I both know you're his favorite. I rolled my eyes. If you share the schedules, I promise I won't tell anyone. Shoto looked at the way I was staring at, to our classmates' figures in the back of the line. Some of them had zeroed on us and our food already. Deal, he said quietly, then sped to the seat we'd claimed since yesterday. It was 2 tables from the window, and right around us were our classmates. As far as I knew, our classmates seemed to contented themselves with their groups. The girls clustered into a small group. Kaken, Kirishima, Kaminari, and Siro claimed a table. Koda, Sato, and Aoyama in one table, Mineta, Shoji, Ojiro, and Iida in another, and of course, there were me, Shoto, and then, oh, Todoroki-kun, you eat that much? Ochako exclaimed as she sat herself to my left. Shoto shook his head quietly. I could see his fingers twitching, but his manners demanded he wait for the others before he can eat. Unfortunately for him, I wasn't one to concern myself with that sort of things as long as the involved doesn't mind. And they don't, so I took great pleasure of eating as obnoxious as politely possible right in front of him. If glares could kill, I would die about 1,000 times now. Then you must really like cold soba, then? Ochako, bless her heart, was trying to diffuse our little fight. How do you know today's special menu is cold soba, Todoroki-kun? Yaoyorozu asked gracefully from my right. You do seem so eager when you run out of class as soon as the bell ring, Todoroki-san. Tokoyami said calmly. Direct hit? I allowed myself a few seconds of amusement before speaking up. Well, it's because I know an upperclassman and he told me about today's special menu. Shoto lucked out that today's his favorite. Well, it's half right? I'm pretty sure there are mentions of upperclassmen getting close to Izuku in the manga, which I didn't read at all. I could just put Shoto into the ditch, if all else fail. To Shoto's left, Tokoyami sent me a glance, clearly not buying it, before turning to his food. I've been craving for fish the whole week. Shoto and I shared a glance. He definitely knows. Shizuka? Shoto suddenly started, what do you bring in that paper bag? That brought everyone's attention to me. Yaoyorozu made a surprised noise. You bring a bag here? I didn't even notice. Shoto is playing dirty, I thought, frowning at the boy slurping his food calmly. I could just feel the smugness radiating off of him. It's actually muffins. I rubbed my nape sheepishly. I woke up too early and made a whole bunch of muffins, so I thought I'd share with my classmates. Really? Can I have one, Shizu-chan? Ochako perked up. Of course, here. Do you want one with blueberries or choco chips? I offered a muffin in each hand, one in pink ribbon and the other blue. Ochako chose chocolate, pink. Ochako chewed the muffin slowly, eyes brightening. It's amazing. It's better than any other muffins I've ever ate. I fidgeted in my seat, cheeks turning dusty pink as Tokoyami and Yaoyorozu asked if they could have one as well. The trader, Shoto, spoke up again. Shizuka liked to cook and bake since we were 7. I laughed. Yeah, after trials and errors and at least 3 burned kitchen I finally got it. Uraraka-san, you're right. This is delicious. Yaoyorozu's eyes lightened and she radiated an aura of excitement. It was quite adorable. Tokoyami contently chewed his muffin, his eyes closed peacefully. Suddenly, a dark shape came out of his stomach and shaped into claws and a head. Discreetly, Shoto and I tensed and readied ourselves to fight. It was an instinct born from Enji's tortures. Trainings. A few seconds later we relaxed. Hey, Shizuka, it's really good, Dark Shadow said. Next to him, Tokoyami glanced at Dark Shadow with a frown. Be polite, Dark Shadow. I don't mind it really, I grinned. Dark Shadow, right? Since you call me Shizuka, can I call you Kage, Shadow? He grunted, the area of his cheeks looking suspiciously pink. Whatever, as long as you brought us any more food, preferably fish. Dark Shadow. Tokoyami scolded. What? So fish is both of your favorites? I'll remember that. I grinned. With a humph, Kage disappeared back into my friend's stomach, leaving said friend to apologize for Kage's rude behavior. It's okay, Tokoyami-kun. I think Dark Shadow is very cute. Ochako grinned. Yes, he is kinda like a tsundere, isn't he? Yaoyorozu hummed. Besides, I'm glad you both like my muffin, Tokoyami. Muffin? A head full of pink hair suddenly appeared from the seat behind me. Where did you get a muffin? Wait, someone said desert? Kaminari popped out from the table next to ours. Ashido-san, Kaminari-san, Yaoyorozu greeted. Did you make them, Midoriya-chan? Ashido asked, eyes hopeful. Yeah. I have enough for our class. Do you guys want some? I asked bashfully. Of course, was echoed by our whole class in the canteen. I promptly exploded into a mess of red. I am going through the door like a normal person, which of course wasn't normal no matter which angle you look at it, but that's All Might for you. He was extraordinary in the good way. The class fell into an odd chatter as the number 1 hero made his way to the small podium, which in Yui was the same as a teacher's table. I teach fundamental studies. All Might started. It is a subject where you train in different ways to learn the basics of being a hero. You'll get the most units out of this subject. We nodded seriously. Let's get right into it. This is what we'll do today. He paused for a weird pose. Combat training. Combat training? I paused as my mental alarm started going off. Crap. Isn't that where Izuku and Kaken had their first big fight? And to go with that are these. 4 rows of metallic boxes went out of the wall, each box displaying a large number going from 1 to 20. I assumed it was categorized by our absent number. From the requests you sent in before school started. After you change, gather in ground beta. Yes, sir. As a class, we went to the changing room together. Yaoyorozu, Ochako, and I walked together with the rest of the girls to our room. Ochako and Yaoyorozu instantly fell into a conversation with the rest, but I was mostly quiet. My mind kept going back to the canon and how it became a disaster. We arrived to ground beta, the place I took my practical examination at, along with the boys. Shoto looked as awesome as he was in the story, but there was an unexplainable chill to him. The smile he directed at me was warm though, so maybe that was my imagination all along. Along with Shoto's plain awesomeness, there was also Tokoyami, who looked mysterious as if he was a dark prince of sort. You looked mysterious in a good way, Tokoyami. I managed a twitch of lips. Tokoyami, clearly concerned, said back, your costume looked practical, it fits you well. Uraraka's and Yaoyorozu's looks amazing as well. I couldn't help but blush at that. My costume was a sleeveless black bodysuit with dark green stripes. On my wrists and ankles were medium-sized metal bands, and I wore a pair of green low boots with thick soles made of durable materials. There was also a high-tech transparent visor on my eyes and a small comm on my left ear connecting to the button-sized tech right at my heart. It tells me if my heartbeat was going too fast. For a precaution, Yagi had me installed. I was satisfied with how amazing and professional it came out, but embarrassingly enough, the bodysuit was skin-tight. It showed off my curves too much for my liking. It's embarrassing. I forgot to write the material for my costume, so they made it skin-tight. Ochako smiled sheepishly. I frowned. I told them I wanted durable material, but I guess skin-tight fits my description. Don't worry, Midoriya-san, Uraraka-san, Yui most likely choose the best material that fits your quirk most. You're right, Yaoyorozu-chan. I leave the others to their conversation and turned to the most quiet in our group. My eyes examined him again, and grinned when it landed on the left of his face, which was covered in ice, and even the gray eye had red button on it. Rebelling against your father? I couldn't just lit up my right side every single time, he said dryly, to which I smirked. Enji would have pouted if he saw. From the front, Yagi grinned. Before we start, let me remind you all, from now on, my lips twitched upward. You are heroes. Now, it's time for combat training. Iida, dressed in a knight-like costume, raised his hand. Sensei, this is a battle center from the entrance exam, so will we be conducting urban battles again? No, we're going to move ahead 2 steps. He raised 2 fingers. Most of the time, fighting villains takes place outside, but if you look at the total numbers, atrocious villains appear indoors at a higher rate. Imprisonment, house arrest, backroom deals. In this society filled with heroes, truly intelligent villains hide in the shadows. All for one, what an excellent example of a true villain. For this class, you'll be spilt into villains and heroes and fight 2-on-2 indoor battles. Without basic training? Azui inquired. This is a real battle to understand those basics. However, the key this time is that there's no robot you can just beat up. He reminded. How will wins and losses be determined? Momo asked from beside me. Can we beat them up anyway? Bakugo growled. Will the punishment be expulsion like with Aizawa-sensei? Ochako asked worriedly. How shall we be split up? Iida raised a hand again. Isn't this cape crazy? Aoyama showed his sparkling purple cape, and in a rather scary unison, the whole class pretended he didn't speak. All Might was getting overwhelmed by each question. I blinked, a flash of amusement went through my green eyes. First class, Yagi-san? Nevertheless, I took pity on him. But everyone turned at my firm voice. I'm sure All Might Sensei will explain everything we need to know. We should listen to him first, and if there are things we don't understand, then we ask. You are right, Midoriya-san. I apologize for being so hasty, All Might Sensei. Iida bowed stiffly. The class murmured sheepish apologies, and All Might sent me a discreet relieved grin. I allowed my lips to quirk in a teasing half-smile. It seemed no matter what form, Yagi was always as adorable as a golden puppy. The situation today is that the villains have hidden a nuclear weapon somewhere in their hideout, he explained, and in order to win, the heroes have to either found and touch the nuclear, or capture both villains with the tape I'll provide later. However, as long as the nuclear is safe and at least one villain remains until the timeout, then the villains win. Of course, the villains are also given the capture tapes, and if they capture both heroes, then it's also a win. It's to the advantage of the villains then, I mused, they have many leeways. Either way, I'll have to win. Teams and opponents will be determined by drawing lots. They're being decided by random? Kirishima asked, surprised. Pro heroes are often required to create makeshift teams with heroes from other agencies in times of emergencies, Shoto explained quietly. Yeah. He winced as we glanced at each other. We clearly remember one particular occasion where it didn't work out. I see. So teamwork is important for heroes too, after all. Thanks, Todoroki. Kirishima grinned, Shoto nodding quietly. Team A, Uraraka Ochako and Todoroki Shoto. Team B, Bakugo Katsuki and Midoriya Shizuka. Team C, Aoyama Yuga and Shoji Mizo. Team D, Tokoyami Fumikage and Iida Tenya. Team E, Ashido Mina and Sato Rikido. Team F, Hantasiro and Toru Hagakure. Team G, Yairozu Momo and Kyoka Jiro. Team H, Kaminari Denki and Tsuyu Azui. Team I, Koda Koji and Kirishima Ijiro. Team J, Mineta Minoru and Mashireo Ojiro. Shoto glanced sharply at my paling face, but I was transfixed to the enthusiastic figure of All Might who continued on. The first teams to fight will be these teams. Team B as heroes versus Team D as villains. Do your best. Villain team was given 5 minutes to choose their hideout in one particular building, while hero team was told to wait outside the building and strategize. The rest and All Might went to monitor room. Before leaving, Shoto had given me a frown, his eye hard. "Are you going to be okay?" was what he said. I managed a nod and a smile that felt fake even to me. "I'll be fine, don't worry." Being the great best friend he is, Shoto had glared at Kaken in warning before leaving behind the fuming blonde. Unfortunately, that left me to an angrier Kaken. No time to waste. As soon as everyone was out of sight, I warily approached the blonde. Bakugo, I'm aware that you don't like me, and we don't have the greatest relationship, but can we work together professionally just this time?" Red eyes full of hatred were shot to me, and I flinched. "Just because you actually have a quirk, and somehow managed to get into Yui, doesn't mean you can boss me around, Deku?" "That's not what I meant," I said quietly. "I am just asking you to be willing to work together. I might be perspective and good at strategies, but that doesn't mean I won't include your opinions and suggestions. Bakugo, please." His shoulders tensed visibly, shadow hiding his face from my pleading eyes. Please, just this once. I'll stay out of your way after this. I won't bother you again, I swear." I clenched my fists tightly. "It's just, this is my chance. To show it to everyone, to All Might, that I'm strong. I don't want to lose. I want to win. Please. You, of all people, should know how it feels to want to win." "Fuck no." I swore my heart skipped a beat at that moment, and not in the good way. But Kaken continued on. "I don't need your fucking promises about avoiding me, you're going to do that. But you owe me one, don't fucking forget it, Deku." What? What is even this? Is this real? Am I in hearing it right? Kaken, the angry Kaken, really say that? "Yeah, I won't forget, Bakugo." I beamed. "Stop fucking talking, Dad. We need to strategize. Are you ready, heroes, villains? Your 5 minutes are over. So ready or not, your 20 minutes battle starts. Now. What the hell? That wasn't even 3 minutes. Predictably, Kaken had blown up to All Might through the comm, fire in his eyes. "Your 5 minutes is up, young Bakugo." All Might said sternly. "You can stay still in your place and discuss your strategy, but the longer you do so the shorter your time to act. Remember, you only have 20 minutes, and it's 19 minutes now." "Shit," Kaken gritted his teeth in frustration and turned to me. "Let's go now, Deku. We'll discuss our strategy on the way." "Lead the way," I told him and followed. We entered the building. From the outside, it looked like a perfectly normal 5 stories building, but the inside walls were gray in color and cold to touch. It must be a metal of sorts. Right after we passed the door, we found out the inside was just an empty maze. There was nothing to be seen, except for pillars and metal walls. It was cleverly built for causing confusion, and no doubt searching for the way to stairs will cost us precious several minutes. We weren't lucky to get chosen first. If we were chosen at least on second turn, we would have an idea of the surroundings and more time to strategize. The only advantage of being first is that our enemies have the same disadvantages as us. Now, we can only use impulsive strategies and instinct. A grin grew on my face. I'd found the key to our victory. Roughly about 2 minutes passed while we were wandering the first floor, according to Deku. We've got about 17 minutes more to do our job. Katsuki risked a glance from the corner of his eye. A year had passed since he and Deku last saw each other, and it hadn't been a nice goodbye either. Cold shoulders, evading eyes, and silence. It was all they ever do to each other since 10 years ago. Deku changed. It was clear to him who always looked down to Deku the quirkless, talentless, useless, a liar, can't even fulfill a promise. She's everything he hated, everything he wasn't. And he was glad for it. He was glad that, as they grew up, the differences between them became more clear. And soon when her 5th birthday passed, the rumors and talks about her quirkless status spread. She's a quirkless? Useless? Trash? Why don't you just kill yourself? People liked to talk about unnecessary things, and gossiped on whatever they could. Deku was one of their middle school's favorite. The way she stayed silent and acted like she didn't hear made the rumors grow worse. Spineless was what he thought, even though he saw the quiet strength in those green eyes. But people don't change that easily. Deku was still the same Deku at some aspects. Stupid fucking Deku. Right after this battle finish, Katsuki was going to ignore her. Pretend she didn't exist like he always do. But now he was going to beat others into pulp first, and possibly had Deku accidentally fly to his fist. And motherfucker, she better not forgot that fucking favor. She wasn't one of her word after all. His ears caught the faint approaching footsteps, about 2 turns away, and a savage grin took over his face. Dead meats, here they come. Once we took another turn to the right, my eyes met with the red irises of Tokoyami. In an instant, my body tensed and Kage rushed to us. I jumped away, Kage hot on my heels. From the corner of my eye, I saw Kaken jumping away as well, but I didn't have the time to make sure. Kage's attacks were restless, humongous claws swiping at me right and left. His mouth pulled into a savage grin not different from Kaken's, and I had to wince. His claw caught my calf, blood spraying to the floor. I made a big jump to my behind, panting as I touched the wound. Shallow, I noted with relief. While I fell back for a moment, Kaken had covered for me and was goading the shadow being with explosions. It was part of our haste plan, and I had to say this with pride. It was working. When we first entered the door, I thought that we could only do with impulsive plans and instinct. The word instinct triggered my mind. Because whose instinct is better than Kaken himself? Our opponents were Tokoyami and Iida, both very logical persons. They were very smart in their own ways and perspective in Tokoyami's, but that doesn't change the fact that their brain works the same way that I do. The thing that differentiated us was the fact that I'm used to thinking outside the box. They didn't. I concluded that either both of them were going to attack us, or Tokoyami attacking us while Iida guarded the missile. But Kage's weakness was light, and Kaken's explosions were bright. So, their tactic must be. A blur went straight to me, light glinted on the silver metal. It wasn't so fast that I couldn't see, but enough to overwhelm me for a second. I threw myself to my right, shoulder hitting the wall roughly as I felt it bent slightly under the pressure. Iida stopped himself a few feet away from me. Too close for comfort, but I couldn't step away without possibly inviting him to attack again. It was safer when I could see him clearly. Listen, you're faster than I expected, I greeted, eyes never straying away from his figure. For a second, I could see Kaken slowly cornering Ka and Tokoyami as they tried to cover up their weakness. Hero, you're lucky. I will not make the same mistake twice. Light glinted on his glasses, and suddenly Iida seemed looming and, well, scary in a funny way. He really become a villain. However, you are not my target. And then, in the same manner of speed, he ditched me. I took offense on that, Iida-san. I sped after Iida, one for all rushing in my right arm. As soon as I was close enough, I punched him on the face. Iida had turned at the last second, and was fast enough to evaded it narrowly. The wind from my attack knocked him away further. Your opponent is me, Iida. I shouted, a step away from him, my left leg swung toward his. He sidestepped it, and instead went for his own kick, which I jumped and punched him in the middle of my twirl. It grazed his head guard, knocking it off and revealing his face. Iida gritted his teeth. Tokoin. They switched. Out of my way, you fucking four eyes. Your opponent is me now, hero. Don't underestimate me. What a loud bunch, I muttered to myself as I dodged another swipe of Kage's claw. He growled, jumping at me from the high with claws ready at his side. My eyes widened, and in a moment of panic, I lost control of one for all. Kage was blasted to the wall, the ceiling he was a second ago blasted. The sun shone from above, and debris were falling around us. What? Shit, the roof's gone with a punch? Kage asked incredulously. What power? Tokoyami said, a bit breathless. You are strong, Midoriya-san. However, you can't defeat us. 10 minutes left. Let's go, Iida-san. Tokoyami yelled. Yes? What? Come back here, you fucking four eyes, I'm not done. A few seconds later, Iida was gone with Tokoyami on his back, Kage having retreated to his stomach. They left us alone. They're trying to draw it out, I mused. I don't fucking care. First, that four eyes stopped me from beating fucking Bird Boy, and then he ran away with Bird Boy. I'll kill him. Kaken stomped his way to the stairs. I'd thought they're going to keep attacking us, but they must have realized they've no advantages against us on the combat side. I'm gonna kill Four Eyes. Hi. You can put me down, Iida-san, Fumikage spoke quietly. Of course, Iida said, putting Fumikage down to his feet. Fumikage looked at his surroundings. They were already at the 3rd floor thanks to Iida's speed, and nearing the stairs in case they need to run again. Running was never his favorite strategy, but it was the only way they stood a chance against such powerhouses. Midoriya, for all her small stature and gender, was fearsome in battle. From what Fumikage had observed in their quirk assessment test, the green-haired girl have a quick mind as well as a quick feet. She was perspective, like him, and logical as well. Doubled that with her strength quirk that was akin to the number 1 hero himself. This far, he'd only seen her using it on her hands, but he wasn't willing to rule out the chance that she could use it everywhere like All Might. Bakugo Katsuki had ranked first on the practical examination. He was a fierce and short-tempered, with an explosion quirk. His quirk was rare and strong, but the disadvantage was how flashy it was. The sounds weren't quiet either. Bakugo might seem just an angry teen with flashy quirk, but Tokoyami knew it wasn't all the requirements for entering Yui. He must be smart as well, though how smart was the question. Nevertheless, Tokoyami and Iida were confident of their obvious weaknesses. Their strategy depended on them. Iida and him shared a glance and a nod. We only need to hold them off for 6 minutes more. To be honest, I'm still uneasy about leaving our missile alone, Tokoyami-san. Perhaps I should check it for a second? He said. It was an entirely valid question, and something he himself relate to. He, too, wasn't happy to leave one of the keys of their defeat so unguarded, but they couldn't spare someone to guard it. And what luck that they didn't, because Midoriya and Bakugo worked surprisingly well together. But perhaps a big explosion headed straight to them, with a speed faster than even Iida. Dodge! He shouted as loud as he could, frantically throwing his body to the left and away from the incoming danger. The explosion hit the stairs behind them, leaving them as crumbles and broken metals. Our escape way is gone. Fumikage tried to think clearly while his eyes scoured amidst the gray cloud of dust, Dark Shadow ready to come out the second he needed him to. But they also just destroyed their chance of finding the missile. So, the only option left. He stood grimly as the cloud dispersed. Just to fight. He found Iida, looking slightly dazed near the right wall, but fine. He saw Bakugo, approaching them with a huge sadistic grin on his face. Now you can't fucking run away, he said. How? No, if Bakugo is here, then Midoriya? Right out of nowhere, a very strong wind hit Iida and Fumikage in their slightly dazed state, and the next thing Fumikage knew was that he was blown away and fell to his bottom, Iida not looking any better a few feet away. Where? And there she was, flying. No, jumping from the floor below them to theirs through the hole on the floor she just punched air through. I've miscalculated, Fumikage thought grimly, Dark Shadow ready at his side. He'd predicted that Midoriya would use her quirk the same way All Might does, considering her obvious admiration and similarity in quirk. But instead, she used her strength to, essentially, control the wind. Not directly, but indirectly. She's clever, he thought, more than I thought. Dark Shadow, he yelled. The massive shadow rushed to the girl who just landed next to his partner, making a grabbing motion, but Midoriya had just punched Dark Shadow right on the stomach. While they were recovering, Midoriya had advanced to Fumikage in a rush. 5 minutes left. Just a bit more. Bakugo! Midoriya yelled. On the other side of the room, her partner growled, a big explosion following. I got it. Fumikage realized that his sentient quirk was angry now. He was never happy to lose, and they were admittedly at a disadvantage right now. Midoriya's stamina seemed to have no end. Iida. The attack that followed was so big the wind had curled together around her air punch and became a makeshift of a small tornado. And it was heading straight to him. Dark Shadow tried to shield him while he tried to dodge, but there was nowhere to do so. He was cornered. Behind him was the ruins of the stairs. The attack hit hard even with Dark Shadow as his shield, and Fumikage was thrown to the wall hard enough to know there will be bruises on his shoulders and back after this. His eyes closed in fatigue. I have to get up. A warm hand touched his softly, and Fumicage's yellow eyes instantly shot open. Kneeling in front of him was Midoriya. Midoriya, thwop. Around his body was the capture tape. He'd lost. Villain Tokoyami Fumikage has been captured. Tenya panted a bit, trying to control his breathing before the hero, Bakugo, noticed how he was tiring. The helm was gone, so there was no means of covering his tired face. How scary, he thought, eyes locked in the blonde's form. Even though his enemy was sweating heavily, he didn't even slow down. Tenya was attacked with explosions left and right, and his engines were nearly overheating. Still, Bakugo kept pushing forward with a huge grin and no hesitation in his steps. 5 minutes left, All Might Sensei said. From the other side of the room, heroine Midoriya yelled Bakugo's name, and Tenya's opponent growled a magnificent one. Instantly recognizing danger, Tenya jumped behind. Boom! The big explosion rocked the ground for a second, and Tenya could feel sweats dripping down. There was a loud yell from his partner's side of room, followed with a near-violent wind circling on the room. Tenya raised a hand, turning his head just in time to see Tokoyami being blown away to the wall, Dark Shadow retreating after having protected him. Toko! His face was blasted. Your opponent is me, 4 eyes. Tenya's eyes widened at the explosion he could see gathering on Bakugo's hands. Don't underestimate me. Boom. Villain Tokoyami Fumikage has been captured. With a last burst of strength, Tenya ran to his opponent, a hand shielding his glasses from the restless blows. This is our last chance. Mid-run, Tenya froze in place. His eyes had widened in surprise and had turned to Bakugo in shock. How? And then he fainted, the engine on his back and calves having been heated by Bakugo's strategized explosions. And he hadn't even realized. Villain Iida Tenya has been captured. Hero team win. The monitor room is a large, slightly circular room filled with 5 screens on a side of wall. Chairs were situated in the control panel under the screens. It was a typical one. All Might stood in front of them, looking to where it displayed the front of the destroyed building where robot helpers were moving Shizuka, Iida, and Tokoyami to the nurse room. Bakugo was walking to their place. Oh. Bakugo and Midoriya are monsters, Kaminari said, his eyes staring wide at the proof of destruction. Such strength. Kirishima said, they're so manly. But I feel bad for Tokoyami-kun and Iida-kun though, Uraraka frowned, they nearly made it. Midoriya's arm is broken, isn't it? Ashido spoke with a sympathetic wince, and she fainted right after they win. Yes, but if you look at it closer, the villain team kinda outmatched, aren't they? Bakugo and Midoriya both clearly have combat quirks. Siro rubbed his nape. That might be right, but there are often situations where a hero is up against a villain with a quirk that outclassed her. But as a hero, you must find a way to beat them even in their own elements. There's always a way out for everything. All Might explained. The door opened, and Bakugo came with a fierce scowl in his face. He looked irritated at something, but that didn't deter his classmates go comfort him. Bakugo! You did great back there. Yeah, you're pretty amazing. Shoto paid them no mind, his fists clenched tightly as he stared at the screen of the rubbles of the building. Shizuka, after she captured Tokoyami, she'd fell next to him and fainted. Judging from the nasty purple of her arm, it must be broken. She'd used her quirk so many times too. Tokoyami himself had looked surprised and panicked when she fell. Shoto lowered his face, his teal eye glowing beneath the shadow. She's too careless. They reviewed the battle together. Even though villains lose, Iida ended up as the MVP. As explained by Yaoyorozu, he played his role well. His attacks are calculated, and he used his advantage to the maximum, meaning that he knew his power is in speed, so he did his best to dodge Bakugo's attacks and draw out the time. His concerns on the weapon was right, as unguarded the weapon could be found out anytime by the enemy. The fallout of him was that he was tiring in the end, and was overwhelmed by his enemy's attacks. The next battle was Team A versus Team I. Shoto nodded to Uraraka. Let's make this quick, Uraraka-san. Hi. I'm worried about that idiot. The second he stepped in, Shoto told Uraraka to stay back and then proceed to freeze the whole building. Uraraka floated next to him, and a few minutes later both found themselves on the nuclear room, Kirishima unfrozen with Quirk. Koda, though, couldn't move from his position next to the nuclear. Kirishima readied himself to attack, but Shoto had already froze him from his neck down. Uraraka touched the nuclear, retrieved. Hero team win. With a sigh, he put his left hand to Kirishima's frozen body, steam slowly unfurling from the ice. The melted ice turned into a hot shower. I'm sorry, but the difference in our power is too big. He spoke calmly to Kirishima. Besides, I need to hurry. When I come to my senses, the first thing I could see was a pair of lips. Ichicha? Was my intelligent question. Recovery girl stepped back with a serene smile. Ah, you're awake. Your right arm was broken, so I had to use my quirk to speed the healing. It costs you your stamina, however. So that's why I suddenly feel drained. Thank you, recovery girl. I murmured. Do you have any energy bar or milk? Both were the best way to heal my hunger until I could get my hands on solid food. She was surprised, but shook her head. Unfortunately, I don't. But here, take a candy. Thank you. Shizuka, you're awake. A blonde came through the door with a smile. All might, I said, grinning. Here, he offered the plastic bag I hadn't saw he have, and inside was 3 boxes of various favored milk. Thank you. I smiled. You're welcome. He replied, after you've truly recovered, you should go home. School has just ended, but I believe your class was given the assignment to review the battle results by Aizawa-sensei. I turned to the window, where soft hues of orange and red came through from. The sun was fast setting. I'd missed the whole afternoon, it seemed. Tokoyami, is he okay? I asked, suddenly remembered the boy who I'd blasted with one for all so recklessly. I hoped he was okay. He's fine, recovery girl said. His back and shoulders had bruises, but I'd healed them. He's back to class already? I'm glad. I curled my fist. I don't know what to do. If I'd hurt him with this power, I should apologize to him. Young Iida was also brought here with you, but he woke up an hour ago and insisted to go back to class. All Might explained, and laid a calming hand on my shoulder. I nodded. Iida fainted too? What did Kaken do? In his real form, All Might was as scrawny as person could possibly be. But sometimes, there was the charisma and unexplainable aura around him that drew people. And right now, with his hand on my shoulder and a smile on his face, his blue eyes shone with his strength. Shizuka, I am proud of you. You did very well, more than I'd thought, he said. Unbidden, a blush colored my face. Thank you, Yagi-san. Thank you for everything. 10 minutes later, I was heading to my classroom. The classroom was on the other side of the building, so I had to pass the front door. I halted to a stop. Kaken, it was him. His back to my face and sunset dusting the sky. Somehow, this was familiar. Bakugo? I shouted. His shoulders tensed and he walked faster. Confused, I ran after him, trying to stop him for a moment. The milk I was sipping was thrown to a trash can. Hey, wait, I said. Stop fucking chasing me. He growled deeply. No, wait, Shut up, Deku. He turned slightly, face shadowed. You said you'd leave me alone. You can't even keep to your word once? What? I looked at him wide-eyed. Where did that come from? Bakugo. Leave me alone. He gave his back to me and continued walking. What's up with you? Shut up. I flinched when he turned around, face full of rage and red eyes glaring daggers at me as if it's my fault. It's my fault, everything is my fault. Even from the start, he gritted his teeth. What? I asked quietly. Bakugo? I'm sorry if I bother you, but I was just going to give you this. In my outstretched palm was a chocolate milk. As a thank you, I said. When I was watching the ice guy, I thought I couldn't beat him. He said, the difference in our power is too big. Damn it, damn it, damn it. His fists clenched tightly in his sides, blue veins bulging. I don't need you, Deku. So don't underestimate me, don't look down on me, damn it. I'll win next time, I'll win with my own power. I don't need you. He looked up, and I felt my eyes widened. He's crying. This is my starting line, do you hear me? I'll win by myself next time. And he left me, alone in the sunset, my hands still holding the milk he hadn't take. I couldn't stop myself from gazing wide-eyed toward the closed entrance of Yui. Kaken. It was his start line, but it was also the moment that made me realized, maybe I never know him, this whole time. Hey, wait for me. Why are you calling me? What do you mean? We know each other. Are you sure? You haven't even seen my face? Turn around then. I'm sure I'll remember when I see your face. Remember? If that's what you wish, but don't be disappointed when you can't. I'll remember. Do you? Who are you? I told you. Your face. What is your face? You won't remember. I woke up with cold sweats and clammy hands, breathing hard through the scent of sun rays, bird chirping from my window. The little alarm clock in my desk blared with bold red numbers. 7:30. There was still an hour before school start. I cracked my neck painfully. I fell asleep again. With a sigh, I stood and took my underwear to the bathroom, preparing myself for another day at Yui. Yesterday was the second day of school, and we already had a combat battle training. There was a fundamental studies today too, so something interesting was bound to happen. The door clicked shut behind me. The little journal left open on my bedside, the drawing of a large circular building and devil wings next to it, alongside with a brain. The word USJ highlighted. The page drifted closed with a gentle wind from the open window. I hurried along the 10 minutes walk to Yui, my unruly hair twisting and tangling further than it usually is, but I have no time to worry about that. I'd nearly fall asleep at the shower and now I was very nearly late. There was still 3 minutes. I nearly make it. I stopped short when all of a sudden, reporters and cameras surrounded me from all sides. Excuse me, can you tell us what it's like to be taught by All Might? What's he like in class? A reporter asked eagerly, practically shoving her mic to kiss my lips as I tried to step back. I'm sorry. Could you please get out of my way so I won't be late for class? I wiggled frustratedly. The mass media didn't budge an inch. Is All Might as amazing as a teacher as he is a hero? Tell us. She grinned. No, I won't, you hag. Can't you just let me go? I yelled inwardly. Well, that's enough. A firm voice sounded from beyond the little cage they made for me. It was Aizawa-sensei, standing in front of Yui entrance with all his scruffiness glory. I nearly jumped in happiness when I saw him glaring at the surprised mass media. They must have recognized that he was a teacher, and soon I was left by myself as they went to him. Sir, does all the annoying reporter stopped short, and her eyes bulged at the attire my homeroom teacher always wear. You're a mess. Who are you, anyway? Seriously? Aizawa made a shuanji motion with his hand, obviously unimpressed. Distantly, I recalled that he become an underground hero because his distaste of media and how they interfered with his hero works. He's off today. You're interrupting our classes, please leave. He glowered at me, what are you waiting for, Midoriya? Get in here now. I yelped. Hi, Aizawa-sensei. I ran to his side, slowing down once I'd entered the entrance. Aizawa-sensei turned his back on the media, walking without a care next to one of his students. Behind us, the purse kept yelling. We'd like a direct interview with All Might. I feel like I've seen him somewhere. Hey, don't you think you're too scruffy? Come on, we'd just like to ask All Might about. Beep. Clang. I jumped at the sudden noise of metal, and was able to get a peek at the infamous barrier of Yui, the one that ensured their students' and staff's safeties. It was even more amazing up close than what I'd seen on the internet. Aizawa-sensei swiftly turned my head around without a word. What? What the hell? A distant voice yelled behind it. Yui barrier, huh? Amuse. Is it really as amazing as it looks, though? Walk faster, Midoriya, you're already 5 minutes late. Hi. Good morning. Aizawa began to the silent class. Awkwardly, I made my way to my chair as quietly as possible, grinning sheepishly to anyone who looked my way. After I've seated myself, Shoto turned to me with a raised eyebrow, Yaoyorozu next to him with nearly identical expression. It was a bit eerie, to be honest. Ochako, bless her heart, smiled cheerfully at me and waved briefly as to avoid Aizawa-sensei's attention. My luck was so rotten today that Aizawa-sensei saw anyway. You're already late today, Midoriya. At least listen when I'm talking, he said with a straight face. Ouch, I winced. My teammates sent me pitying looks. He must be irritated from the media. I'm sorry, sensei, I said. He narrowed his eyes on the class before continuing. Good work with yesterday's battle training. I've looked over your grades and evaluations. He turned to Kaken. Bakugo. You did better than expected, but it's still not enough. Grow up already. Stop wasting your talent. Got it? Kaken replied. And Midoriya, I blinked when he suddenly narrowed his gaze to me. You settled it by breaking your arm, huh? And you faint before the battle was even over. Learn to control your quirk, because just trying isn't going to cut it. You have potential, it's only a matter of whether you're capable to harness it or not. No one need a hero who can't even protect themselves. I understand, I replied softly, even though his words struck me hard. You have to learn to protect yourself before you can even think to protect others. Can I really control it in time? I gripped my table hard enough that it hurt. Danger is approaching soon. Now, on to homeroom business. Sorry for the sudden announcement, but today we're going to take another brutal test. Pick a class president. Aizawa-sensei deadpanned. A completely normal, school-like thing. The whole class exploded in happiness. It was no wonder, remembering the first day where we thought one of us were going to get expelled. Kirishima stood. I want to be a president, let me do it. Me too, said Kaminari. I'd like to do it, Jiro said without any enthusiasm. The position was made for me. I want to be a leader. In my administration, girls will have to show 30 centimeters of thigh. Mineta yelled with a perverted expression. Pick me. Kaken too, yelled angrily from his chair. It was expected that everyone showed great enthusiasm toward this. For us future heroes, to be able to require such an important position would mean a better record, because heroes are those who can lead others well. That was to say, not all of us were interested even if that. Shoto and I were the prime examples. Next to me, Shoto had already put his head in his desk, correctly anticipating the long process this choosing would follow. He even yawned. Sighing from the loud noise, they were such loud energetic bunch, I proceeded to put my head on the desk as well. Leading the many is a task of heavy responsibility, but ambition does not equate to ability. This sacred office demands the trust of its constituents. If this is to be a democracy, then I put forward the motion that our true leader must be chosen by election. I bonked my head on the table accidentally, in loud enough sound that everyone turned to me. Iida, stunned, asked if I was all right. That was the line. I burst out laughing until my stomach hurt, and soon others started chuckling as well. Iida was so funny. He said all that with completely serious face while from the start his hand was raised the highest. And those hand wavings. Oh God, I snickered helplessly. Don't ever change you. Got it? Huh? He asked. He's so unwillingly comedic that I couldn't help it. I grinned. Those are always the funniest. Up front, Aizawa-sensei sighed miserably, as if we were causing him headache. Do whatever you guys want, just make it quick. And then he fall down the floor in his yellow sleeping bag. Where'd he hide it anyway? But we haven't known each other long enough to build any trust. As Yui stated. And everyone will just vote for themselves. Kirishima said. That's precisely why anyone who manages to earn multiple votes will be the best suited individual for the job. Iida replied. Wait, doesn't this end with Izuku as the class president in canon? Hell no. No way am I doing all those works. Things have started to change but I'm not risking it. Hold on, I voiced. To make it easier for us, shouldn't we not be able to vote for ourselves? Then it'll be known who exactly we thought the most suitable, instead of just having half-hearted result. I agree. Tokoyami nodded. Me too. Mina grinned. Good idea, Shizuka-chan. Ochako gave me a thumb up. In that case, I choose Midoriya-chan. Yaoyorozu smiled at me and I smiled back. Wait, what? I hissed. Why? Why DKU? Yaoyorozu blinked. A hint of amusement in those glittering eyes of hers had me scowling in complete offense. Because I thought that you're the most competent leader in this class. Yesterday, you managed to not make only an effective plan, but you also are observant enough to predict correctly how Tokoyami-san and Iida-san will react. Besides that, you're a reliable and responsible person. I believe you'll lead us well, Midoriya-san. A few people agreed with her, while I pouted at how accurate Yaoyorozu had gotten me. This is exactly what I'm avoiding. But I think Iida-kun is the best one for this. I said. He's efficient, logical, and responsible. Just smart. He's the one who suggests this from the start anyway, and he managed to get the attention of us all even when we're fighting each other's. It's also clear he's the one that wants this the most. Why not entrust this to him, instead of a poor student like me? Thank you so much for your faith and trust in me, Midoriya-san. I won't betray it. Iida bowed. I believe in you, Iida-kun. I grinned. Yaoyorozu's explanation yesterday's cool too. She's very smart, responsible, and reliable as well. I think she'll make a great president. Todoroki-san's amazing as well, but he doesn't seem interested in this. Nope. Considering said person is sleeping right now. And so, the election officially start. Wait, what? The result, it was 6 for Yaoyorozu, 7 for me, and 7 for Iida. It's a tie? Ashido blinked. Then who's going to be the president and vice? Well, like I said, I voted for Iida. I shrugged. I voted for Midoriya as well. Iida admitted, lights shining in those eyes of his in excitement at possibly getting the position. Then, can I give the position to Iida-kun? I'm fine with being vice or even nothing at all. I told the class. I'm not really confident in myself to lead you all. The work is also kinda dready. Ochako and a few others made a noise of understanding. And so, it came to a close. Class 1A now have the Iida Tenya as president and Midoriya Shizuka as the vice. The lunch break went like a flash. The cafeteria was as crowded as usual, considering that nearly all of the students chose to eat in this place instead of the class or somewhere else. Ochako, Yaoyorozu, Shoto, Tokoyami, and I sat in the same table as before, but today something was different. Iida-kun, what are you doing? Ochako raised a hand in greeting, smiling as brightly as always. Uraraka-san. Nothing, I'm just searching for my friend's table. He answered politely. Shoji's table? Tokoyami asked. He isn't in yesterday's table because some upperclassmen managed to snag it first. Is that so? Iida trailed, pushing his glasses as he scoured the whole room. Iida-kun, why don't you sit with us? The break time is going to be over before you found them in this crowd. I invited, patting the empty seat on my left. Are you sure, everyone? Of course it's okay. Yaoyorozu assured. Shoto calmly spared Iida a glance before going back eating. I see no problem, Iida-san. Tokoyami and Ochako nodded. Thank you. Midoriya-san, Yaoyorozu-san, Todoroki-san, Tokoyami-san, Uraraka-san. He bowed before taking a seat I gestured to earlier. I sweat dropped. That's so mouthful, Iida-kun. You can call me Midoriya or Shizuka, you know. I don't really like honorifics. And before we knew it, lunch nearly came to a close when... Vreeth! A loud alarm blared. Security level 3 has been broken. All students, please evacuate in an orderly fashion. Nearly everyone jumped to their feet and ran. My friends and I exchanged a look before Iida stopped a rushing upperclassman. Excuse me, but what is security level 3? It means someone's infiltrate the building. It hasn't happened in my 3 years here. Anyway, You two hurry up and get out of here. Someone, infiltrate Yui. In an instant, we stood up. I'm forgetting something. I'm sure I do. But, what is it? Shizuka, let's go. Shoto took my hand and followed after our friends. The doors leading to the hallways were crowded. People were pushing left and right in their desperation to get out. Some even fall and get trampled. I yelped when someone hit me, separating me from Shoto. I couldn't even see anyone else that I know. I was left alone, in the middle of strangers pushing. Suddenly, a harsh shove came from someone behind me and I lost my footing, falling when someone else took a firm grip on my shoulders and pushed me until my back hit the window. Thank you. Are you okay? I looked up to a boy about my age protecting my front with his body, his hands still gripping my shoulders as people pushed to go through us. Of course I'm fine. I can harden my body into steel. Are you okay? He asked. I'm fine, thanks again. I'm Midoriya Shizuka, Class 1A. Tetsu, Class 1B. Do you know? Everyone. A loud yell made everyone look up. Iida was standing above the emergency exit sign, hanging on to a pipe. Everything's fine. It stunned everyone silent. It's just the press. Nothing to panic about, we're fine. This is Yui. Behave in a way befitting of this great institution. He yelled. Even in those ridiculous pose, clearly uncomfortable and nearly falling, he managed to look so cool. He managed to make everyone, even strangers and upperclassmen, believe in his words. His sincerity is amazing. I smiled. You know him? Tetsu asked. Yep, that's my class president. Now for today's basic hero training. All might myself, and one other will supervise. Aizawa-sensei said. Sensei. Shiro raised his hand. What are we doing exactly? Earthquake, fire, flood, we're preparing you for them. Rescue, written boldly in the card on his hand. It's rescue training. Rescue, huh? Sounds like another rough day. Kaminari sighed. Right? Ashido chirped. Come on, this is what being a hero's all about. Kirishima grinned. I'm pumped. I'll be right at home in Flood Ribbit. Azui stated. Rescue? Training? My heart's speeding up. What's this? Hey, I'm not done. Aizawa-sensei glared, and took a small remote from the teacher's table. It's up to you whether or not you wear your costumes, as some of them are ill-suited to this sort of activity. The training site is a bit remote, so we'll be going by bus. That's all. Get ready. Loved it. What is happening to me? Are you okay? Shoto slid next to me as we make our way to the circular building, Aizawa-sensei leading the way. I startled out of my thoughts, blinking up to the concerned face of Shoto. I'm fine, don't worry, came out automatically out of me. Is it bad that you have such thing? Is it bad that I'm fine comes automatically when you have nothing else to say? No. What am I even thinking? It's fine, why am I dizzy? I'm fine? Shizuka. My eyes widened. Shoto's hands were grabbing my shoulders tightly, clearly having yelled at me. Aizawa-sensei turned a bit, but fortunately the others were too busy in their excitement. I smiled at him, trying to reassure him that I'm fine, nothing to worry, and it seemed to work. Before we start, I have 1 or 2 words, or 3, or 4, 5, 6. 13 trailed. Let's talk about this later, okay? I gently lead his hand from my shoulder. Shoto exhaled. All right. As I'm sure many of you are aware, my quirk is called Black Hole. It can suck in and tear apart anything. The rescue specialist started. And you've saved countless people from all sorts of disaster. Kirishima grinned. In front of me, Ochako kept nodding in awe. Indeed. 13 stared his gloved hand. However, this same power could easily kill. There are some of you with the similar ability, right? In our superpowered society, the use of quirks is heavily restricted and monitored. It may seem that this system is a stable one, but we must never forget that it only takes one wrong move with an uncontrollable quirk for people to die. He quietly said, This quirk. I closed my eyes. Kaken, Shoto, Kirishima, Kaminari, Ashido, even Ochako, Every quirks have the potential to kill. So, it's up to us on how we utilize it, huh? Is that what differentiate us with villains? During Aizawa Senpai's physical fitness test, you came to learn of your own hidden potential. Through All Might's battle training, you experienced the danger that your respective quirks can pose to others. He explained. This class will show you a new perspective. You will learn how to use your quirks to save people. Your powers are not meant to inflict harm. I hope you leave here today with the understanding that you're meant to help people. That's all. Thank you for listening. He bowed. Bravo! Bravo! He's so cool. He's right. I smiled breathlessly. This gift, more than anyone else, I know how precious it is. First Aizawa-sensei, then All Might and 13. Has your father ever been this motivational? I nudged Shoto playfully. His lips curled up a bit. He's the exception. Swirl. What? Danger, 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 get out of here. R.A. and now no danger sheer. A high-pitched scream rung painfully in the closed building. As if someone was tortured. I hadn't even realized I opened my mouth until people were crowding me in worry. Give her space, everyone. Midoriya, what's wrong? Sensei. I choked out through the white noise ringing painfully in my brain. Danger, danger. Get out of here, we need to get out. In front of the fountain in the middle of the training facility, a black smoke twirled bigger. A hand came out of it, then another one that covered a face. An eye glared at us. The next second, the black smoke portal grew larger and countless people ran out of it. Weapons, sadistic eyes gleaming with malice intent everywhere. What the heck's that? More battle robots? Like during the entrance exam. Kirishima squinted his eyes. No. I whispered. Shizuka? Shoto asked quietly. Don't move, everyone. Those are villains. Aizawa-sensei tensed his body, yellow glasses perched at his nose. No. 13 and Eraserhead, is it? The black smoke had ensembled into some sort of a guy with mutant quirk. According to the staff schedule I received, All Might is supposed to be here. Where is he? We've come all this way, and brought so many playmates. All Might, the symbol of peace, is he here? The man covered in clay hands said. I wonder if some dead kids will bring him here? Aizawa-sensei. I yelled hoarsely while Shoto helped me gain my balance again. We need to evacuate, hurry. Those guys, they're dangerous. Wait, sensei, aren't there intruder sensors? Yaoyorozu asked. Of course there are. 13 answered. Are they only here, or also at the main building? Shoto mused grimly. Either way, if the sensors aren't working, it has to be one of their quirks doing it. This place is far from campus, and they picked a time when there'd be fewer people here. So maybe they're not as dumb as they seem. They must have an objective, because this is a well-coordinated sneak attack. Our classmates were stuck in horrified silence. 13, begin evacuation. And try calling the school. One of these villains must be jamming the sensors. There's a good chance one of their electric types are causing the interference. Aizawa-sensei said, eyes never away from the still flooding villains. Kaminari. Try using your quirk to signal for help. G got it. I will stall them until backup is here. He said. No, sensei. I yelled. Listen, I have a bad feeling about this. That handman, he's no ordinary villain. I don't think fighting them is a good idea. Midoriya. The firm tone stopped me. Calm down. Backup will arrive soon enough. You and Iida, lead your friends as far away as possible from here. 13 will protect you all. He gave a half smile, before it was smothered by his serious expression. Right? Calm down. I need to calm down. Danger. At least, don't go near the brain monster one, and don't let the handman touch you. I just have a feeling. Trust me, sensei. I whispered desperately. No. I won't let it happen, no, Aizawa-sensei. With a brief nod, he jumped right to the crowd of villains. Shizuka-chan, let's go. Chako urged me. Next to me, Shoto's hands still gripping my arm and shoulder tightly. I was glad for him. He was my reassurance that everything was fine, he was here. His warmth told me everything that he didn't say. We were stopped short not 10 steps later. Greetings. The smoke guy said, "We are the League of Villains. Forgive our audacity, but today we've come here to you with one objective in mind. To end the life of All Might, the symbol of peace." Loved it. We were under the impression that he would be here today, but it seems his schedule is reversed. He paused. Well, no matter. My role remains unchanged. The black smoke, wasp, a voice in my mind whispered, spread out in front of us, threatening to swallow us whole. Boom. Kaken and Kirishima attacked the villain in unison, grinning. Not if we end you first. Bet you didn't see it coming. That was close. Yes, those students you may be, you're the best of the best. No. Both of you, get back. Shizuka. A hand reaching out for me, trying in vain. Teal eye wide with fear. I smiled. It's okay. I'll be fine. We disappeared.